Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1165 of the War News stream. And we have massive news tonight from everywhere around the world, mainly from Iran. We have seen massive explosions around several Iranian critical infrastructure sites, as well as Ukraine possibly preparing a strike on the Russian V-Day parade, and Crimea is under mass drone attack as we speak. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world as major developments have been happening in multiple different areas, including that of the United States of America today, in very interesting form for the evolution and progression of technology for the armed forces of the Republic. We have been able to hear significant news from inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran as a 4.0 earthquake lightly tremored the area around Karaj, while one of the largest power plants inside of the entire Islamic Republic caught on fire earlier today, along with a cardboard factory, which also caught on fire as well, which I didn't include in the stream, but we did include it in the short war video earlier today. I had to remove that one because there was literally so much news going on everywhere in the world that was one of the lower ticket stories of the day. But nevertheless, we were also able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan engaged in combat on the front lines with the Republic of India, firing off star shells and then engaging in a heavy firefight, which lasted for several hours. According to Pakistan, they have stated the firefights have ended, and we have also heard that they are now threatening nuclear war over a possible confrontation with India here in the future, as the Indian defense minister has also canceled his trip to the Russian Federation and the upcoming Victory Day parade. Not only that, we have also been able to hear that a major attack by the state of Ukraine on the Russian Federation has once again crippled the Russian Federation's abilities inside the area around the Black Sea coast, as Ukrainian drones, air and sea based, were reported to attack the city of Novorossiysk, with explosions being reported around the general area. Not only that, but today, for the first time in history, history, the Ukrainian armed forces were able to claim the first unmanned vehicle kill on an enemy aircraft in history, as a Ukrainian Magura sea-based drone fired off an R-73 air-to-air missile from the boat, striking and destroying an SU-30SM equivalent to about $35 million in value. We do understand that so far we have not heard of a recovery of either pilot in the SU-30SM, leading us to believe that both pilots may have been killed in the attack. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear of explosions once again occurring around the city of Kerch over the night, and we were also able to see wider attacks once again sweeping the area of the entirety of the Crimean Peninsula, once again striking and destroying critical Russian defense structures throughout the area. Not only that, but significant news has come out of the United States today, as we were able to see that the U.S. Department of Defense unveiled for the first time officially on their end the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program and one of the prototype vehicles involved in that developmental cycle. It apparently is going to be a largely AI-operated air superiority aircraft, and also there is a second version that will be largely drone-operated by a pilot on the ground. This is also coming as the United States of America is apparently going to be providing nearly $30 billion over the course of this year in humanitarian aid and support to the state of Ukraine, according to President Zelensky, which, as a matter of fact, is the largest amount of monetary support provided in humanitarian aid to the state of Ukraine over the entirety of the war in a single given year period. Not only that, we've been able to hear that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland sunned down their last self-propelled gun artillery unit today, as the last AS-90s in the British Army are now inside of Ukraine and being operated by the state of Ukraine's armed forces. Not only that, but we've also been able to hear of slight military buildups by the Russian Federation near to the area of the borders of Finland, as military camps, forward operating bases, and brigade headquarters are now being constructed along the entirety of the nearly 900-mile-long Finnish border. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that while the Russian Federation's army is invincible and legendary, or as they say in Russian, nekrasmoshinia i legendaria, it appears that Vladimir Putin is not entirely dead set on that notion, as he has now stated that he will be able to view the invincible, legendary, and undefeatable Russian Federation's armed forces conducting the heroic Victory Day parade on May 9th via Zoom call, as he does not believe that his safety can be assured with thousands of soldiers literally standing in the middle of the square in the dead center of the capital city of Moscow, which is surrounded by one of the most extensive and powerful air defense perimeters in the entirety of the Russian Federation so far. We have also been able to hear that others have started to cancel their visits to the Russian Federation during that time, including FICO of Slovakia and also FICO, the credit score system, as well. We have also been able to hear some other significant news from outside of that area, including news that the USS Carl Vinson is now deployed into the Middle East at this very moment and is assisting the USS Harry S. Truman in conducting airstrikes against the Houthis. The Houthis have continued to fire back against the Israelis. The Israelis did end up shooting down a drone launched by the Houthis overnight near to the port of Eilat, and we've also been able to hear that the Israelis are now calling up reservists with call to arms to be able to prepare for another offensive into the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the United States Armed Forces have conducted a successful airstrike near to the area of Deir ez-Zur inside of Syria overnight, and we have also been able to hear of a lot of other news. I'm actually cutting this short because this feels like it's going on forever, just the general overview of what we got to cover tonight.
It's another laundry list, honestly. It's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I just had to completely cut out the entire Ukrainian front line because there was a lot that also happened there today. But I've been summarizing what we're going to be talking about for roughly 10 minutes at this point, and I think y'all are getting kind of the picture that this is going to be an incredibly long and very storied news night tonight. We have a lot to talk about, and these are just some of the largest ticket items. They're not even all of the big ticket items that we have to cover over the course of tonight. Quite literally, it is an insane night of news coverage. But we are going to be moving y'all into the most major piece of news that we're able to get today, the most major singular piece of news that we have today, which came out of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And it was a piece of news that has had a lot of controversy surrounding it and also a decent amount of confusion. And I've tried to eliminate the confusion the best we can, and I'll explain a little bit of where it was coming from. In the course of the day, there was a 4.0 earthquake that rocked the city of Karaj and Tehran. I do want to put this out there that 4.0 earthquakes are not incredibly strong. 3.0 earthquakes happen quite often around the world and usually are so light in their tremors that most people don't even notice them. A 4.0 is only a little bit slightly higher than that. And so while you would notice some light vibrations, it isn't going to be causing any kind of insane damage, nor is it really indicative of anything else that would be significant. For example, a nuclear test. Nuclear tests usually are somewhere around a 5.0 on the Richter scale, at least within the localized area where they're conducted, meaning that this was more so just normal seismic activity that occurred in the area, and incredibly light seismic activity at that. But at the exact same time that that happened, there was a explosion at one of the larger Iranian power plants in the country, and also a cardboard factory in a similar area also caught on fire and started burning to the ground as well. I have completely removed every single mention of the cardboard factory in tonight's news. If y'all do want to see more about that, we have more information about that on our Twitter. The link is in the description below, but we're only going to be talking about the power plant, at least here on the stream tonight, because that was the more significant one of the two, and also, from what we're able to tell at this point, it is highly questionable or dubious to say that the Israelis were involved in any way in a direct strike, as the reports that air defense was active in the area during the time of the explosions at the power plant appears to have been contradicted heavily, as there's been no video or picture evidence that came out confirming any kind of air defense activity, and that news has been out for about 9 hours at this point, considering that our short war video made earlier today was made quite literally just 30 minutes before that all happened, and we never were able to see from that point up until now any air defense fire, meaning that these statements are largely uncorroborated and may just be rumors passing through the streets of Karaj. But nevertheless, getting all of that out of the way, it is time for us to actually get into the story itself, as we were able to hear preceding all of this, there was a small 4.0 earthquake that ended up hitting around the area of Karaj. It was around 16 kilometers southwest of Karaj at a depth of 8 kilometers, meaning that it's fairly normal seismic activity, incredibly light at that as well. We can see a giant star here, pretty much labeling exactly where it was, but nevertheless, the earthquake was not a significant one, but still, it did happen. Right after that earthquake was detected, something absolutely insane happened. There was apparently an explosion that happened right at one of the power plants near to the area, the Gayam power station, which we can see right here. And I'll just show you all the clip, because the power plant exploded and caught on fire quite prolifically, mind you, right after the earthquake occurred, and it's fairly unknown even still what actually caused this at the moment. We just know that the power plant exploded and caught on fire, but here's the clip right here. But you see the air is a orange hue in the middle of the night. You see the winds are blowing.
Look at that wind, though. It's like a hurricane out there.
Yeah, it really is, man. I think the winds are coming off of the mountain ranges to the north of the city. Let me go down there and actually show that. I think they're coming off of these mountain ranges to the north of the city, which are actually quite sizable. Let me see if I can drop us down on a street view here. So you can see here, they're fairly large mountains, actually. I would say that they're fairly close to being like the mountains surrounding LA. So I guess that's the reason why the winds may be that strong, possibly. But we were also...
You know, the Iranians claimed, this is the claim by the Iranian government, they're saying that a lightning bolt struck on the site of the power plant, and that's what started the explosions. Now, I'm very skeptical about that, but that's the claim by the Iranians. And maybe the high winds are indicative of some type of weather event going right over the power plant, or maybe it's just from the mountains. I'm not really sure, but they're claiming it's a lightning strike of all things.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because the clips that we got of the fire, they were quite significant fires. We could see the one right here.
I don't see any weather in this one.
No, I don't really see any weather. And also, it's a little bit interesting for them to say it was a thunderstorm, because it's like, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like this place is in the middle of a desert, which usually isn't known to have frequent rain or thunderstorms or any showers for that matter at all. Not saying that there wasn't. We didn't ever look at the meteorological or weather reports over Karaj over the course of the day. At least I didn't, so I cannot attest to the actual validity of the fact that there was a thunderstorm. But at least in this clip here, it doesn't look like there was. We see the fire burning right outside of one of the cooling towers at the power plant. I do want to point out that this is not a nuclear power plant.
Also, by the way, just to answer this question real quick, people are asking what type of power station is this? According to the information we have on hand, it's a gas-fired power plant.
So I was asking about that. Sorry, I had to cough right there. A little bit of phlegm building up, but I was asking about that earlier. I was like, is it a coal-fired power plant or is it a gas-fired power plant? Apparently gas-fired, which would make a good bit of sense considering that Iran is a major producer of natural gas and oil. So we can see here that the fire was continuing. Later on, we did get a report that there was possible air defense activity in the area, as sources from inside Iran were reporting that prior to the earthquake, there there was a massive explosion that was heard in Karaj, close to an IRGC logistics hub. Simultaneously, local air defense systems were reportedly activated. Although this report also is saying that they weren't really activated as in they were firing, and we also never got any video or picture evidence to confirm that they were firing at anything ever. And it's been hours since this actually happened. It's been about 9. So we usually would expect that there would have been some sort of air defense activity footage that we would have gotten at this point, and there's been none, largely leading us to believe that there was no air defense activity in the area. And this eyewitness statement, if we want to call it that, may be slightly dubious. The majority of reports indicate the target was likely a power station, once again suggesting that there was a deliberate target that was hit. The cause of the explosion hasn't been determined, but it certainly seems the regime is trying to hide something, which it does seem that is the case, but once again, it doesn't really appear that it was an attack of any kind. It appears that it may have just been some sort of an explosion that happened. Then Iran published a video well after we did get confirmation that the power plant had a fire on its premises, and the Iranian government had also said that the facility was stricken by lightning, and that's why it was on fire. We then saw later the Iranian government actually backtracked all of that, published a video showing the power plant with no fire near it, and then stated that a fire had never happened, and everything was perfectly fine near to the power plant, which obviously is not true, because we have video and picture evidence to corroborate otherwise at this point. But here we can see the video that the Iranians published later on in the night. This was about 2 or 3 hours ago. And we see them showing that the lights are on, and we can also see them showing the power plant over there in the distance, which oddly enough is in the dead center of the city, which usually you don't see power plants in the dead center of cities. Usually they're like out in the countryside somewhere where they're not really around people, but a little bit interesting to see. It's right there.
They want to be able to keep a close eye on it, so just have it right next to the neighborhoods, I guess.
Dude, they said, you don't like the smell of gas? Get used to it. Like, and they just start turning on the power plant.
They've never heard of running power lines from the rural area to the city, apparently.
Dude, the not in my backyard movement does not exist in Iran, apparently. Like, it's put down by the government or something like that.
So they just filmed this video just to try to disprove the fact that it was or wasn't on fire?
So yeah, the whole reason why they filmed this was so that way the Iranian government can now say that there was never a fire, and that the power plant's totally fine, although we have a video confirming there was a fire there.
Yeah, and also they made statements acknowledging the fire was there, so that's kind of a contradiction in itself.
Yeah, you know, that's what the Iranians do, man. You remember that back in the day when the Israelis were attacking them and they said, oh, well, it looks like the Israelis may be attacking us, and then later on they said nothing happened and there was actually no damage at all. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it's like the exact same strategy here. Or better yet, when the President Raisi died, remember that, man? They were like, it may have crashed. Actually, it didn't crash, and he's fine. Oh, he's dead. And then they like went through like the 5 stages of grief in like 6 hours before they reported he was dead.
They can't keep the lie straight. They're all like already prepared to lie about stuff. They're like, okay, let's just say it didn't happen. That's the safest bet. And then there's already other Iranians out there saying, okay, it did happen, but it's just a lightning strike. It's like there's no coordination at all, which is, I guess that's a good sign for the West, because if they can't even coordinate on something that simple, then they probably won't be able to coordinate very well in the military either.
Yeah, and also the fact that this is really close to the city, I actually want to see where it is, because it has to be somewhere within the built-up area, and I'm sure it would stick out like a sore thumb when we see it. That's apparently a sugar production company. That's a little bit bizarre. Didn't think Iran was a real big sugar producing country. So there's a wheat storage facility there. Here we go. The Gayam power plant right here. And there's the cooling towers. And here is the actual, that is one Spartan power plant right there, actually. That is a very weird power plant. I've never seen a gas power plant that's been this spread out.
Yeah, it's weird looking. It's just, it's also like really junky looking too, like, even for a power plant.
Yeah, you know, look at, like, what in the world happened here? Are they, like, coal-firing these, like, thermal dischargers? like what's going on here?
They're scorching the whole ground that the power plant's on.
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit interesting. Also, the fire looked like it was coming from around somewhere near to the actual cooling towers. So if we were to take a guess, it looks like it may have been one of these silos down here on the south side of the facility that may have caught on fire somehow. But once again, it's a bit of a mystery as to what actually caused the fire and why there was a fire that happened at this facility. We've largely ruled out at this point that it was any kind of direct military action, because the Israelis have not come forward and stated that it was a direct military action, and it also appears that the air defense these reports were never founded in reality and largely existed in fiction. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been putting in their opinions and thoughts at this moment about what it was, and it seems as though the poll is largely following along with the prevailing concepts provided by the information that we have so far. As Iran suffered several major blasts at the Gayam gas power plant. It's not nuclear, by the way. It has cooling towers, but that does not mean it's always a nuclear power plant. At a major power plant with the air defense supposedly activated, although we really didn't get a lot of proof of that later. And a lot of people are wondering, what was it? And it seems as though we have two prevailing theories right now in the audience. One is that it was a covert sabotage attack, possibly by the Mossad, possibly by another foreign actor like the CIA here in the US of A that conducted the attack. Some others are saying that it was just an Iranian workplace accident, which is highly likely. I mean, they had a gunpowder factory blow up, and we really still don't know if that had any foul play in it involved at all. And others are saying, in a very small amount, that it was an aerial attack by Israel, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well? Because really, it could be anything after all.
It could be, but it looks like 37% of the audience said it was a covert sabotage attack on this power plant, while 36% said it was another Iranian quote-unquote accident, and 15% said it was aerial attacks by Israel. And I'm also with the Enforcer. I don't think this was an aerial attack by Israel. Of course, Israel does have stealth-equipped fighter jet aircraft and also other aircraft that could go in relatively undetected. But at the same time, though, we've not seen any statements from Israel for them taking any type of responsibility for it. And also, we have very, very sketchy information about reports, or very, very unconfirmed reports, allegedly, of people spotting low-flying fighter jets in the sky. So I'm really not buying that personally. There's not much evidence about that. Now, one thing I will say about the air defense, a Israeli news reporter reported that on their news station in Israel, that apparently, according to some reports, the air defense was active. We also don't have any video evidence of that either, so it's largely just anecdotal. So, take that with a grain of salt. So I would say, generally speaking, it probably is some type of covert sabotage attack. There's been way too many explosions in Iran over the last week or two for it to simply be another accident, because accidents usually don't happen in huge groups like this. It's usually once a year or something like that. It's usually not like 4 or 5 in just a matter of 2 weeks. That seems a little bit unlikely. So I think it is some type of covert sabotage campaign that's going on, most likely carried out by Israel. But of course, that's still just speculation. But it is pretty interesting to see it so close together. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with the 37% as well. It's a pretty even split at this point, and between people saying it was a workplace accident, which I would assume that's a pretty high likelihood, because Iran doesn't have OSHA, and OSHA saves the world, as many people know. And others are saying that it was a covert sabotage attack. I would have to go with the 37% that said it was most likely a covert sabotage attack, because how do people say it in New Jersey, Matthew? They say it's a rash of stuff that's happening. There's been a rash of these kinds of incidents that have been happening in Iran, and once again, we have a pretty decent kind of a lens that we have constantly on Iran these days. And incidents like these, of this kind of caliber and this kind of a high-profile scale, have never happened in such frequency in Iran over the whole year and a half that we've been observing them. We have seen so far that the entire port of Regi got blown up in an explosion for the large part, and there was significant damage caused because solid rocket fuel stored at the port just spontaneously combusted out of the blue at some moment and then destroyed about a quarter of the port. We then saw after that there was a significant explosion of a gunpowder factory in Isfahan, which ended up killing dozens of people. And now we're hearing, just days after those two events occurred, that right inside a garage, right at the gas power plant facility, which I have to go down here to find, that there was now a significant fire that broke out at that facility as well. And so, once again, we have not heard of major incidents like these happening for the entire year and a half that have just spontaneously happened. But nevertheless, we're now hearing that they're happening one after the other. And it's starting to lead us to believe that there's no way that workplace safety is being completely overlooked in every single one of these instances for all of them to happen pretty much in a chain reaction to each other. I would largely believe that there probably is some sort of covert sabotage or interference that is being involved in this, and that is leading to all of these major incidents. Because once again, we haven't really heard of an incident so far that has affected something on a smaller scale yet, everything's been a largely big-ticket item. The Gayam power plant's one of the largest power plants in this area of Iran. The Rajeh port is actually the biggest intermodal port in the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and not only that, it's also the largest bulk and aggregate port as well. Not only that, but the Isfahan gunpowder factory is also one of the larger gunpowder factories in the entirety of the Islamic Republic. So for all of them to be happening at the same time, and all of them to be big-ticket facilities, it seems to me that there's a decent credence that this actually could end up being some form of sabotage by some sort of a foreign state actor. Of course, that would still be up in the air who that would be. It could be the Israelis, it could be the United States, hell, it could be someone else entirely. It could be the Taliban in the Emirate of Afghanistan, for all we know. We have no clue. Once again,
Honestly, honestly, if I just had to take a stab at it, I would personally say this has the appearance of softening attacks or some type of operation to soften up Iran's infrastructure before an attack is carried out on a larger scale. It kind of has that look to it because, like you're saying, these are critical infrastructures that are being exploded, attacked, or whatever you want to call it. The major port being hit. Now there's a major power plant being hit right outside near the capital. Things like that in very important locations. It seems like a covert way to prepare for a larger attack. Now, of course, the only country so far which has the capability of pulling that off on a very large scale would be Israel. And Israel has made statements that they might depart from U.S. advice and decide to take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure anyway, which could start a war. And by softening up these infrastructure targets, that could put Israel at a strong advantage if they did launch an attack, if that's what is indeed occurring.
It could, it's highly possible. But I do want to say, though, because I think there's a lot of credence to this as well, it may just be that this is a rash of accidents as well. Like, I would largely believe that this has a telltale sign of some sort of direct sabotage that's happening, that's involved in all of these incidents occurring so close to each other. But it could also be that it's just a string of major workplace accidents. Although that's, you know, still a little bit of a far-fetched that this many big-ticket workplace accidents all happen within the span of about a week from each other. But it's possible. You know, it's not entirely out of the picture. But still, it's unheard of over the past year and a half that we've looked at what's going on inside of Iran in its entirety. But nevertheless, I hope we were able to address that well, at least the best we could, because it is a very interesting kind of a mystery at this point on what actually really is going on inside of Iran and why all of these kinds of things are happening. Meanwhile, we also were able to hear, keeping us in the Middle East for a little bit just to cover everything else, that the U.S. Armed Forces did conduct airstrikes near to the area of Deir ez-Zor, as according to local sources, tonight's U.S. airstrikes on the outskirts of Deir ez-Zor targeted equipment and positions in the vicinity of the Al Omar oil field, left behind by the U.S.-led coalition during the recent drawdown of forces in northeastern Syria, which we can see right here. We see some explosions in the distance, way off in the distance, mind you, but quite a large number of them. Oh, we hear the sound of the U.S. thunder above. Man, where in the world were the Turks responding to the U.S. Air Force?
Yeah, really. That's odd. They don't like to respond to us for some reason.
Dude, the Turkey is like, Israel will not be allowed inside of Syria. Meanwhile, the U.S. starts bombing their people at the air. Yes, Mr. America, you can do whatever you want. Bomb the hell out of them. It's like the Turks don't show up for America, but they'll show up to try and intimidate the Israelis. A pretty funny one when you think about it. They know where
Let me send Pete a message real quick on Signal, and I'll see if I can get an answer.
Yeah, we'll see. Actually, by the way, I forgot to tell you, you can't message Waltz anymore. He's no longer in the group. He got kicked out.
Oh, damn.
Like, yeah, sorry. You know, like, yeah, delete it. Like, we can't use that one anymore. But that is quite the sound of American jets above. They sound like they're not that far up, maybe 10,000 feet.
It's a very nice sound if you're just watching an air show, but if you're on the receiving end, that's a haunting sound.
Man, right now, man, all of the guys that are in Jelani's army are looking up like Willem Dafoe in that meme where he's like looking up in awe and fear. Like, they're all doing that right now down in the air as sore. But that was the end of the clip. Very nice to see the U.S. Armed Forces are conducting airstrikes against enemies and adversaries of the United States within the region. Meanwhile, we were able to hear that in the meantime, we are continuing our air operations against the Yemeni Houthis inside of Western Yemen. And as of today, we've been able to see that the second aircraft carrier has joined the USS Harry S. Truman in the operations. The USS Carl Vinson. Let's all give it up for the sailors and the carrier strike group of the USS Carl Vinson. We all love the Carl Vinson. We all love the Nimitz-class carriers. They are an icon of the United States and its ability to power project at sea. But take a look at this right here. This is a little video that they made in the midday as they were conducting underway replenishment operations with the USNS Amelia Earhart.
Oh, they finally found her.
I guess they did.
Turns out she was fighting the Yemeni Houthis the whole time.
Man, the whole time she was asking for more guns.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
I always appreciate the Navy. The Navy is keeping things tip-top out there in the open sea. But that spot of rust right there in the right, they ought to paint that over. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see the Carl Vinson conducting its first carrier operations of the strikes conducted against the Houthis in their campaign, which we can see right here. There goes a couple of F-18 Super Hornets.
It's good to see them flying off the deck and not rolling off of it.
Yeah, that's a good one. These seem to be locked down a little bit better. In a second, we're going to see something really neat. Let me move you all into that next clip so that we all can see what's neat. First off, this whole clip was a vibe, you know, with that sunset over the carrier deck. It looked really nice. Now, I've been waiting to tell you all this because this is a pretty cool one to add in. You might have seen a little sneak peek of it right there. I'm trying to wait for the actual clip, which is the last one here. The USS Carl Vinson is the first carrier of its type involved in the campaign against the Houthis that actually has a squadron of F-35Cs on board.
Oh, that's very nice right there. That's cool.
Yeah, very nice.
Look at it go.
Man, eventually the Navy is going to field almost nothing but F-35s.
Now, I would really hate to see one of those roll off.
Man, dude, when those roll off, the U.S. Department of Defense Board of Acquisitions weeps. Like, every single time one of those rolls off the deck, they're not going, it's just a Hornet. It's like the brand new, spanking new, one of the most expensive aircraft ever produced, even in production, to just roll off the deck of a carrier. That would be sad. Also, I saw someone say it's the F-35B. I believe the F-35B, if I'm correct, is the VTOL version for the U.S. Marine Corps. I believe the Navy uses pretty much solely the C variant, but let me go check on that just to make sure. The F-35. Who doesn't want to go look at the Wikipedia page on this? It's a beautiful looking aircraft. I mean, that thing's just incredible looking. So let's see here. Let's see. The carrier, so the F-35B is for the Marines because it's the VTOL version, and the Navy didn't have any criteria for their F-35s to be VTOL capable. That's specifically the Marines, because the Marines operate a decent contingent of aircraft off of LHDs, which do not have the kind of clearance or flight deck of a larger supercarrier like a Nimitz or Gerald R. Ford class, but the carrier variant is the F-35C. So the Navy does actually use the F-35C, and I think we can probably get a little bit more validity to that further on down. So let me make sure. Let's see here. Let's see. The F-35 fuel. Here we go. So that's right here, an F-35C Lightning II on the USS Carl Vinson. So once again, that specific squadron on the Carl Vinson is equipped with F-35Cs, not F-35Bs. The F-35Bs are for the Marine Corps, the F-35As were designed specifically for the Air Force, and the F-35Cs were designed for the Navy. And I believe the only difference in between the A and the C, at least as far as we would be concerned in major details, is that the F-35C's wingtips are able to be unlocked and folded up to save space inside of the carrier, and the F-35A has entirely fixed wings, meaning that they are not able to be folded up at all. The F-35B has a giant ducted fan, or a motor inside of it for the large part, that allows it to be able to conduct vertical takeoff and landing. So those are really the major differences between them, at least from what I would understand, but I'm not an expert on the F-35s really at all, so if you know better than me, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to correct any of that information. Beyond that, though, we were able to hear that while airstrikes are still being conducted conducted against the Houthis at this very moment by the Carl Vinson and the Harry S. Truman, it appears to not be able to stop them from launching attacks, as we were able to hear that the Israelis ended up shooting down another drone for the second day in a row that apparently was launched from the east, likely by the Houthis inside of Yemen. Once again showing that aircraft operations over Yemen and the air campaign is producing incredibly mixed results. In fact, it's not really producing much results, because the plan was that we would bomb them into the pretty much submission and lacking the ability to conduct any offensive actions, and they are still conducting offensive actions not only against the carrier strike groups, but also against the state of Israel as well, and still, to some extent, global shipping. Nevertheless, it is something that is showing us that at this point, the United States of America can possibly give up on the campaign over time, once again showing that it's largely ineffective, or we can double down and actually send in the Marines on the ground to deal with the situation, which may really be the only way to do that. Still, nevertheless, that is largely a decision up to the government and up to the American people, whether they would want to try and conduct some sort of a ground operation to deal with the Houthis once and for all, or whether we would just ignore it and allow the Houthis to keep attacking global shipping, and not only that, possibly American shipping passing through the area. However, we also were able to hear inside of Israel, speaking of more rising tensions within the region, that the IDF has announced they will be sending out tens of thousands of call-up orders to reservists tonight in anticipation for a major expansion of military offensive operations soon against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, meaning that the Israelis will now once again be conducting more military action against Hamas inside the Strip as a response to recent developments that have been continuing to not really evolve in a positive way, at least between Hamas and the great diplomats of that terrorist organization and the state of Israel. Because we had a giant discussion last night, folks, for some reason, whether Hamas was a diplomatic political organization, something akin to the Republican or Democrat Party, or was it a terrorist force like Al-Qaeda. We still largely are under the assumption that Hamas is a terrorist force because the U.S. Officially declares Hamas to be a terrorist organization. And I haven't heard of the Tories or the Labour Party in Britain being labeled a terrorist organization, nor the Republicans or the Democrats. So I'd largely assume that they're not really a political organization, they're more so terrorists. But anyways, with that in mind, we do have an interesting question for all of y'all, because Israel is preparing to mobilize troops within 48 hours, much like I was saying right there, to prepare for this major escalation. Generally, what they're saying is that it's against the Houthis. Well, not the Houthis, Hamas. But some other people are throwing in some different thoughts, and it seems as though literally this is split across the board. Some people are saying this mobilization is for a possibility of an Iranian strike. Others are saying this is for the possibility of a Syrian intervention. Others are saying this is for a ground invasion in the Gaza once more. And some others are unsure and undecided. But quite literally, this poll is almost evenly split across the board. And something else that's a little bit more interesting to me, Matthew, is that the totals are 28, 29, and 28 on 3 options. And I think there's a little, let me pull out a calculator because I'm not that good at math, so I want to make sure that I'm getting this right, because I think that total is over 100% on that poll.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so 28 plus 29 plus 28. So we're actually, no, it's actually dead correct. Oh, whoopsies, I'm a little stupid there. I don't do math.
Quick math.
Quick math.
Oh, no.
For some reason, at an odd glance, though, man, I was like 30. Well, still, man, 28, 29, and 28. That is incredibly close still. Well, that's 85. Like, still, for some reason,
it's actually 100.
No. It's like that's like 85, man. I promise you, because 30, 30, and 30 is 90, man. We don't do math well here on the stream.
Then 14, you got to add 14 to it. That's the fourth one.
Yeah, so it is 100. Like the total is 100. I thought you meant the only 3 of them were 100. I was like, no. I was like, I think it's the numbers are right. The math is mathing. Whoops, sorry everyone. You know, I just saw people saying that I was a well of knowledge, and then I just showed you all that I can't even really get a grasp on 3rd grade math. So we'll just forget that one and gloss over that real quick. But beyond that, what are people thinking, Matthew, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right. So on this poll question, once again, it says Israel prepares to mobilize troops within 48 hours and call up reservists to prepare for a major escalation. And so far, I've not seen an official statement from Israel as to exactly what this escalation is going to be. The observers are saying it's for Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but there's no concrete confirmation that that is what this is for based on what I've seen so far. So it looks like 29% said it's intended for a Gaza operation, while 29% also said it's intended for an Iranian attack or escalation, and 28% said it's maybe intended for a Syrian response. And considering the fact that Iran is an ongoing issue, because of course there is no concrete nuclear deal, that is a strong possibility that they might be preparing to attack Iran and have the reservists in place in case a war breaks out. Also, the situation in Gaza is still popping off with Hamas, and they are still attacking Israel. And also, by the way, Syria is going berserk because Jelani is attacking the Druze people in southern Syria, and now Turkey is adding fighter jets to the mix and making it even worse. So it could be all three of these. It could be the reason why they're calling up these reservists. But generally speaking, I would have to say I believe it could be for a Syrian response, because with the Druze being attacked so heavily and Jelani doubling down on attacking the Druze, I think that maybe an expansion into Syria by the Israeli forces could be what they're about to go for. But once again, we simply don't have enough information right now, and that's purely speculation. But they are calling up tens of thousands of troops based on the reports. So that's a pretty big one. But Enforcer, what say you?
So really quickly, folks, I actually wanted to find this while we're speaking about this, because I've seen that some people have actually tried to argue, it's only a handful, that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. According to the U.S. Department of State's website, once again, I got to congratulate, I do have to give a massive congratulation right now to the current U.S. Secretary of State for currently holding 4 titles in the government. I mean, the economy is really bad when the Secretary of State's having to have 4 different jobs to keep his family fed. But beyond that, beyond the joke there, which some people are going to take and act like that was an actual political statement and not just a joke, I'm quickly trying to find Hamas on this list. So every single version of ISIS is on the list, obviously, but we are trying to find Hamas. So, oh look, Matthew, there's ISIS-K, which exists in Russia. We actually designated them a terrorist group too. Let's see here. Dude, Boko Haram. That's actually one inside. I think it's like in the Congo, I believe. Let's see here. The Indian Mujahideen. That's an interesting one. Let's see here. Where in the world is it? Come on. Let's see. Let's see here. Hold up, folks.
Hamas is right there, 1997.
1990. There we go. Hamas, right there. So America has officially labeled Hamas a terrorist organization since 1997. So I think that largely defeats the question as to whether or not they are a terrorist organization or not. They're quite literally a terrorist organization by U.S. Department of State declaration. So they are a terrorist organization. I don't really think there's much more of an argument to be had on that one. But I also noticed, folks, that the IRA is on the list since 2001. Didn't really know we were interested in that one a lot, because usually we only designate terrorist groups that we're concerned about, and we really didn't have any involvement or interest in the IRA at all. But there's actually a whole bunch of interesting stuff with that, because I believe a Pan Am flight, if I'm correct, Matthew, ended up getting bombed by the IRA, and they ended up using explosives that were provided to them by Libya to conduct the bombing, and that was on a Pan Am flight way back in, I think, the late 80s.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. And also there was another flight that was hijacked where it's actually pretty famous. The guy actually took a photo with the hijacker who actually got the explosives from one of these groups right here. I don't know if you've seen that, by the way. It was a guy who actually took a photo on the plane while it was being hijacked with the guy with the vest on. Like, have you seen that?
I don't think so, actually. No, I don't think I have.
The guy asked him for a photo, and the guy who was hijacking the plane said, I mean, yeah, sure, I guess. So they had somebody take a selfie with him on the plane as he was hijacking it.
Oh, that's new. That's pretty new.
That's crazy. The audacity of that, honestly.
Also, another thing, man, I was just looking at here. Almost every single Palestinian group is on the list. The Palestine Liberation Front, the Palestine Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Pretty much everything involved in Palestine is a terrorist group. Like every single one of them has been designated that, and all of them were designated that on October 8th of 1997, which is a little bit eerie, Matthew, because the massacre that occurred in Israel was on October 7th, literally just a day before this, on 2023. So a little bit weird that all happened on the 8th of October of 1997. Anyways,
it's also kind of ironic that pretty much all these groups, are a huge chunk of them, are right in Palestine, which is a super small area of land, and they're all there. It seems almost like they're harboring terrorists.
Yeah, it's a really kind of an interesting thing with that. Also, like, honestly, this list is kind of a trip with some of them, because I've never even heard of them. Like the Indian Mujahideen. Like, I've never heard of an Indian segment of the Mujahideen ever. I've heard of Boko Haram, though. Like, I've heard of them a couple of times. And also, I like, dude, how the rest of the list from here up is literally just every single franchise of ISIS that has ever existed, like every single one, because there's like 90 of them. And also, Trending Agua, they're on the list. they're on the
Trent de
list.
Aragua.
Yeah,
Look at
like,
that. Oh, MS-13s joined the ranks. I think they've been there for. They've only been there since 2025. That's weird.
yeah, well, that was the day, Matthew, where we started saying Trend de Aragua, and then everything got put on the list all at once. On the 20th of February of this year, but still interesting to see. Nevertheless, anyways, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Now, let's get on into that question that was asked of everyone. What is the Israeli mobilization for? I would say it's probably going to be for all three, because the region is highly unstable at this moment. We thought that the end of the Syrian civil war would bring stability at least to Syria, and it certainly has not. And right now, the situation with Hezbollah and Hamas is still as heated as it has been for the past year and a half, and the situation with Iran is still deteriorating, at least in the Israelis' minds. So with all that put together, combining that whole picture, I would say they're probably mobilizing just because they are probably going to end up dealing with all three of them at some point, one after the other. That's what I would believe at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And before we move on out of the Middle East and on into India, and then Ukraine, and then the United States, and then the rest of Europe, and also Russia, which we all have to cover here on the stream as well, I do want to make sure that we grab just a couple of questions, because we have had an absolutely massive viewership tonight. I got to thank everyone for being here, because we've reached a peak viewership of 11.3 thousand people tonight, and 60,000 people have watched this stream so far just in about the first hour of the show. And I've got to thank all of y'all so much for being here. We still have a good ways to go, and I hope y'all been enjoying this so far. And if y'all have, not to be one of those people that hawk this like a million times, but considering you probably have a lot of new people here who may be enjoying this, make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Right now we're at 348,500 subscribers, and the channel is continuously growing each and every day. And if you want to hear news like we've been presenting so far tonight, with a little bit of a less seriousness and acting like the world's caving in on our head, make sure to subscribe, because we run this stream 6 days a week, every day but Monday, at the same time every night, and present the news in the exact same way. And not only that, cover a lot of the news that y'all probably are never even hearing about on mainstream television through channels like Fox or CNN, because they're too focused on trying to push a political agenda or speaking about domestic political rhetoric inside of the United States. We completely remove that from the equation, and we only talk about major global events that are happening all around the world that hardly get any press or attention, even if they are major here in America. And so with that, I hope that does. I hope that gives a little bit of a shout out and a sales pitch for folks to subscribe. And I thank you all so much once again for subscribing if you are. And with that, Matthew, let's get a few questions before we get on into all of the rest of the news that we have tonight, which is still a mound of it.
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to a channel legend. It is Sylvester the Cat, who puts in a $120 donation, the largest super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Sylvester, for once again supporting that channel and helping to keep it running. And Sylvester said, hello there, and hello. They said, does Ukraine have drones that can shoot down Russian drones instead of just ramming them, and a leaf spring tanker since week 1?
Hey, thank you for the massive support, Sylvester the Cat. And that's an interesting question. Technically, the answer to that is yes. Ukraine actually developed a while ago a Ukrainian drone that had an AK-74 underslung on it with the stock removed, that had a 30-round capacity to it. It was just a normal magazine on an AK-74 that was strapped on the bottom of the drone. They also developed another drone that had a shotgun on board, which I believe had a magazine capacity of about 8 rounds, but they did use both of those drones in a limited capacity about 3 months ago to engage and destroy Russian FPV drones that were low to the ground. I mean, several hundred feet off the ground in altitude at the maximum. And it seemed as though they were somewhat effective, but we haven't really seen them catching on beyond that point, which is leading us to believe that they may have not been as effective as other forms of drones that carry an explosive near to another drone and then detonate at them. So I'm thinking that the reason why they haven't caught on is because they may not be as effective as the other kinds of drones. Once again, these drones are wildly inexpensive. The Ukrainians can make them for several $100s a piece, so there probably is not an economic incentive to create a drone that's entirely reusable, that may have a gun or another form of system on it that can just take down the other drone without destroying itself in the process. But the answer to that technically is yes, but we've just never really seen them used in any major form beyond several months ago, when we saw a couple of clips come out over the span of a week, and then we've never seen them used since then. And so with that, I hope that does address that, well, at least the best we would know right now, Sylvester the Cat. And that was a very good question, actually, on a really good topic that we actually have talked about a good bit on the stream before. And I also have to thank you for being a Lee Spring tanker since week one. Loads of people have been here for years, and it's actually pretty interesting how a lot of people, once they get here, they stay here. So people who are joining today, probably 2 or 3 years from now, they'll still be here. And the people who were here at that point 6 years ago, 3 years in the future, y'all will all probably still be here. And I got to say that we're entirely honored and appreciative to have so many people who come to this channel and pretty much make it their home and live on here with us for about 3 or 4 hours every single day, because it is quite a lot of time that we take up in y'all's days. I never really realized that until we end up running these shows, and then I think about it. Matthew and me, I know for sure on me running these streams, I spend about 8 hours or 7 hours just working on these streams, doing the pre-stream prep, and then also running the show combined every day. So it's an 8-hour workday just to run these streams, and then it's an 8-hour workday 6 days a week on just this alone. And then it takes about 2 to 3 hours to create a short war video in the middle of the day. So sometimes my workday can get up easily to about 11 hours a day, depending on the day. But it's really crazy to think that we get to spend that much time getting ready to put all of this news together. And then on top of that, y'all spend loads of time watching what we put together, especially these streams, since they're about 4 hours long most times. And the videos as well. The videos are usually 20 to 30 minutes long these days. And I got to say that I'm just absolutely blown away that so many of y'all really do enjoy this channel so much that on really any given day, we can expect y'all to watch about 3.5 to 4.5 hours worth of Enforcer content every single day. That's a significant fraction of y'all's days every single day, 24/7. And I got to thank y'all so much for bearing with us that much every day and listening to the news from here. It's a high honor that we have. And I got to thank you, Sylvester the Cat, for being one of those folks who have been around for years, enjoying this channel and supporting it to help it to keep on running, so that way we can continue to pester y'all with news from everywhere every single day for a good portion of y'all's waking day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to David Dornblaser, who puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, David, for that massive support, the second largest super chat of the night. And he does not leave a comment, but he does have, of course, like I mentioned last time, that really cool profile pic of Zelensky with the Ukraine flag behind him. And I like that a lot. But thank you, David, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively for the support, David Dornblaser, massively. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel. You didn't throw in a comment, but your support always helps this channel to keep on running. You're someone who always throws in massive support and almost never leaves a comment, and I absolutely hate that, because I always want to make sure that we can give something back rather than just like a broad generic thanks. I always want to make sure to be able to address something or speak of something. But beyond that, I got to thank you massively, because I'm supposing you don't expect anything but the show, and that's why you don't throw in a question or anything like that. But it's a massive thanks, and we're greatly appreciative of it, because it helps us to keep this channel running 24/7, so that way we can yap endlessly on the air. I can yap endlessly on the air. I yap like 90% of the show or so. But it is an absolute honor, and we're massively appreciative of it, because nobody has to support the channel a single dime, much less $100. And I got to thank you massively for that, because once again, no one has to support the channel, but folks like you who go out of your way to do something you don't even have to do are making this channel a reality for right now 63,000 people who have watched since the stream went live. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last one of the segment goes to Sir Real User 9, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Sir Real User, for that $50 support, and we appreciate that very much. And he said, will there be Chinese takeout at the May Day parade for Russia?
Oh, no, there's not going to be any Chinese takeout at the May Day parade. I honestly think that the Ukrainians are like just floating the idea of hitting the May 9th parade. I don't think they're actually going to end up hitting the thing. I think they're just doing that to freak people out and make a lot of the foreign dignitaries not show up for fear that they might get hit. But beyond that, I don't think they're hitting the May 9th parade, specifically for the reason that there's going to be Chinese soldiers from the People's Liberation Army, and supposedly Xi Jinping's going to be there as well, although he still might back out here in the next few days. But I'm thinking that there probably will not be an attack on the Victory Day parade. If there is, color me shocked. I'm going to be absolutely blown away if they're that ballsy to do something like that, because that possibly could start to implicate the People's Republic of China in a very major way against the state of Ukraine for their own reasons. But still, I don't think there will be any Chinese takeout. But if there was Chinese takeout at the May Day parade or the Victory Day parade, what would it be? Would it be lo mein? Would it be orange chicken? Would it be some other dish? And I know a lot of people are about to say, that's not real Chinese. I know, but it's the only dishes I know of, because there's not a lot of real Chinese restaurants around here in Alabama. So we only know of Panda Express, which has, let's see, pecan shrimp, I believe. That does not at all sound Chinese whatsoever. And then they have orange chicken and Mongolian beef, which literally isn't even Chinese by the name. It's Mongolian, so I don't even know why it's a Chinese restaurant. That makes no sense.
Oh, man, I think the Ukrainians are planning on giving the Russians a side of Mongolian beef on the May Day parade.
Bro, they're planning on giving them some of that chicken key. like it's not going to be Chinese takeout, that's for sure. Also, what is this major construction project that's going on back here? What's going on? Can we get a look at that? Oh, they put up like a whole fake facade right here in front of this. They don't want you to see what's going on back there, but it looks like they're building out an entire new city block literally just a little ways away from Red Square, so that's interesting, actually. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, Surreal User 9. Pretty funny one, by the way. I gotta appreciate you for the support, and I gotta appreciate you for the good joke, too. It's folks like you help this channel to keep on running day in and day out, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we just would never be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, it is time for us to move out of this question segment and on into the remainder of the news, which we still have an absolutely massive amount of news to cover. I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I wish I could crack my knuckles right now. I can't. For some reason, my right hand's hurting today. For some reason. I don't know why, Matthew. It started hurting when we were driving around today. It's still hurting a little bit. But beyond that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news. And as I was saying, I wish I could crack my knuckles, because we have such a large amount of news left. It's insane, honestly.
Just banging on the table. We'll crack them that way. Just like, bam, around the table.
Like, just slam on it like a caveman. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the Indian news, or the Pakistan news, whichever one you want to call it, because we were able to hear today that there was a firefight that did happen on the border. Star shells were fired, showing that they were attempting to illuminate the area below to make it a little bit easier to shoot at each other. We can see that right there in this clip.
Isn't that the same stuff the Israelis use when they're going to go do a ground operation?
Oh, hell yeah. These things are, like, actually pretty common. Before night vision became a big thing, that was the night vision. So what they are called are star shells or illumination shells. And let me go see if I can pull up a star shell really quickly. Let's see here. Let's see, let me see. So, this is... Oh, dang, man. I'm trying to see if I can find, like, an actual explanation of these things. And it actually doesn't really seem that there's a lot. But, yeah, and it looks like the AI overview doesn't even really speak about much. You can actually see that there is a Fallschirm Luftpatron, which was made by Nazi Germany, which was used in a flare gun. But the bigger version of these are actually fired off by heavy artillery, like the ones that we're seeing right here. These larger caliber star shells, like the one we saw in the clip, fly up into the air, and when they're coming back down, a small parachute deploys out of the back of them, and the main fuse ignites, which illuminates the sky with some sort of a phosphorus or something of that type. It burns wildly brightly, and it pretty much illuminates the ground below, almost like it is daylight. And it lasts for several minutes until you have to fire off another, but it pretty much completely removes the need for night vision, because it quite literally almost turns the ground below into daylight when those are being used. Pretty interesting little shell. They've actually existed for a really long time. A lot of people used to think that battles at nighttime were not possible, but in limited cases they actually are, because in World War I and World War II, star shells were used quite commonly, and also in naval warfare throughout World War I and World War II, star shells were also used quite commonly as well. So it's a fairly common kind of a thing. It's actually existed for at least over 100 years at this point. But a lot of people really don't know about them and think that the only way to see in the night is night vision, instead of some giant burning phosphorus ball in the sky suspended by a parachute. But anyways, moving on from that, we were able to hear that Pakistan is giving out that old hype talk, as we were able to hear that the firefights started and ended, according to the Pakistani government, as we were able to hear from the Pakistan Strategic Forum that in the Lipa, Batal, and Poonch sectors of the line of control, control. Small arms fire has been observed by the Indian Army. After retaliation by the Pakistan Army, the firing has been stopped for now. We also were able to hear that Pakistan states that it will use the full spectrum of power, both conventional and nuclear, in response to a conflict with India. That rhetoric is really rhetoricking. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, it appears that there's been some cold feet from the Republic of India, not against Pakistan, but for something entirely different, which is the May 9th Victory Day Parade, as Modi is not going to be attending this year. India just doesn't really have like a big stake with Russia anymore. They're not friends like that. But the Minister of Defense of India was going to attend on Modi's behalf. Now the Minister of Defense has also backed out, and they're going to be sending the Deputy Minister of Defense to the Russian Federation to represent India at the largely the event. It's a little bit interesting to see that they're backing out, because FICO credit score from Slovakia has also backed out, and I believe another leader from Europe has also backed out as well, man.
Vucic from Serbia.
Oh, yeah, Vucic from Serbia. Yeah, the Serbs were going to be there. They're not going to be there anymore. And another interesting thing is that while they're not going to be there, at least we could always count on Putin to be there. He's going to give a rousing speech to the troops about how they should all lay down their lives for Russia, although he never will. All that kind of a deal. He was going to, give one of those big rousing speeches, and Xi Jinping's going to be there. And of course, we know that Putin would always be there, because he always says that Russia has the greatest army on the planet, and that they're steamrolling the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians don't stand a chance. The Russian FSB is on top of everything, and they know every single Ukrainian plot, every single Ukrainian plan. And not only that, the Russian army is just made up of some of the best crack troops on the planet. They are truly just the greatest on earth, according to Putin. No one can beat them in combat. They are truly undefeated. America's military, which is weak and speaks of things like time off and no hazing, they just never could compare to the Russians, which truly are great because their recruitment advertisements are really manly. But for some reason, Putin will no longer be attending the Victory Day Parade in person, and will be attending it via Zoom. As Putin stated that he will not be attending the May 9th Victory Day Parade in person due to concerns regarding his security, and he will be watching the event online.
Is that the first time that he's not attended in person? Because I don't recall him skipping one before.
Yes, this is actually the first time that he'll never attend in person.
Yeah, that's wild then. Yeah, that's really crazy, because that's basically, I think most leaders would insist on showing up anyway, because they realize the image that puts forward, it looks cowardly. But for Putin to say that he's definitely not going to show up and he's going to watch it online, that puts forward a bad image. And also, in my opinion, that indicates an attack might be really likely, because for him not to show up and put that bad image forward like a coward, that must be some pretty good intel indicating that something's going to happen.
So let's paint the picture, though, Matthew, beyond this. So Putin says the Russian army is the greatest in the world. He's said that for years now. He says that they're winning the war in Ukraine. He says that the FSB has breached the Ukrainians at every level to know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. Moscow is about 350 miles away from Ukraine, and over the course to make your way to Moscow, you have to fly over Kursk, Oryol, Bryansk, Kaluga, Tula, and then the entire city of Moscow. Not only that, you have to fly past, supposedly, the air defense perimeters of Kursk, Oryol, Bryansk, Kaluga, and Tula, to then make it to the most vast and well-armed air defense network on the in the Russian Federation, according to Putin, on the planet. And then on top of that, on that specific day, there's going to be about 9,000 to 11,000 Russian foot soldiers standing in the middle of that square. Not only that, with hundreds of tanks, or at least dozens of them, sitting further back on Tverskaya Street. And out of all of that, he's saying that he's still not going to be safe enough to attend.
Crazy, honestly. And I will say this, I think that the main concern would be how much air defense they have around the region, because most of the troops are going to be, dressed up in their dress uniform. They're not going to be necessarily ready to fight necessarily. And also the small arms fire, if the Ukrainians sent drones or missiles in, wouldn't be so helpful. So, but even at that though, Moscow has the most air defense of anywhere in Russia. It's like a fortress compared to everywhere else when it comes to air defense. So that's crazy to think that Putin wouldn't show up. The only scenario that I can think in my head, at least personally, would be that Putin believes that Ukraine's going to attack it in such large numbers with so many drones and et cetera, that they won't be able to even stop it with the mass air defense that they have, which would be honestly shocking to me.
It seems like that actually might be the case, but it's just absolutely crazy to think, Matthew, when you think about that and the reality of what the Russians betrayed to their people, how crazy it is for them to say all of the stuff that they've been saying about how good off Russia is militarily, and even still he's not going to show up for security concerns. It's like, Is he implicating now that the Ukrainians are just way stronger than Russia, or that Russia is just so incompetent that there's no way to guarantee his safety? What is he trying to say? Like, what is the point behind this one?
Yeah, and also the fact that all these foreign leaders instantly got sick all of a sudden. Like Vucic of Serbia got ill and had to run to the restroom and then run to the hospital immediately because he got so suddenly ill. Also, someone else got ill. Who was the other one that's not showing up?
Let's see. FICO?
Yeah, FICO was also got ill. He said, "Oh, I suddenly feels like sick on the stomach. I need to run and quickly go back to hide real quick or something." So he ran off along with Vucic from Serbia, and now the Indian defense minister said, "Oh, you know what? I actually need to stay in India because there's some things here that I need to like talk about and stuff like that. So y'all go right ahead." All these people are suddenly backing out. It's like. And then Putin is saying he's going to be online to watch it. It's like that's a very cowardly look for apparently the strong country of Russia to be putting forward to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and it's like if this parade is supposed to be safe, then why in the world are thousands of people going to be watching from the sides of the streets? Why are there thousands of troops in the square? It's like if the danger is so high that Putin could be killed at this event that he's not even going to attend in person, why even have the event at all? Because literally the top guy there who should have the best security isn't even safe there. So that means nobody's safe at this parade, at least according to that logic.
Yeah, honestly, if I was a Russian and I was going to this parade, I personally wouldn't be showing up to it just out of pure, like, I guess you could say safety concerns, the best way to say it. Because if the Ukrainians do attack it and it's attacked in a really big way, which I still have a little bit of skepticism about that because it would still be quite severe. Because remember, Chinese troops are going to be in this parade. Like, they're still showing up. Even though some of the dignitaries might not be there, the Chinese troops and foreign troops are going to be in this parade. So if they are hit, that might implicate these other countries being directly involved in the situation as well and could cause it to go really rogue. So I just wonder if they're actually going to attack it. But for them not to show up, though, that makes me really, really interested by that.
It does make me really interested, too. Also, one other thing I was wanting to do really quickly while we're here. What does it look like just a couple of blocks away? Huh. This
Not
actually,
too bad, but of course it's Moscow, though.
yeah, but this doesn't look as good as I would think it would. I mean, this is just like 3 blocks away from the Kremlin. It's like that's actually kind of rough looking a little bit, to be that close. What does this place look like up here? I'm not gonna lie,
Not too
dude.
bad. This looks like a European city, honestly, to me.
But yeah, for this to be the capital city of Russia, though, and in the dead center, it's like that doesn't actually look as good as I think it would. Like how the Russian propaganda portrays it. They portray it as like walls of glass and steel of epic skyscrapers, and then you come here and it just honestly looks like Rzeszów in Poland, which is just some town in some city in Poland. It's like this doesn't even look that good.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I saw someone bring up a good point about why Putin might not be showing up to this parade. By the way, Bootlegger said he might be worried that a sniper could get him. That's always a concern with Putin being out there because, of course, a Russian general did get blown up in their car the other day, somewhere around the area. So that was probably rattling to him. But at the same time, though, he was planning on showing up this entire time up to the very last minute as of today. So I would say the sniper is probably not the concern, in my opinion. It's probably more of an aerial attack, would be my guess, because there are ways to mitigate, the threat of a sniper. They can put up bulletproof glass. They can make sure that Putin's not in a line of sight. They can lock down the surrounding buildings. And they do that anyway, because even though the Russians are generally incompetent, they do take the executive security for the president very seriously. So they are actually protecting Putin quite good. But I doubt the sniper is the concern. But what are you thinking, Forcy?
I would say it probably wouldn't be too much of a sniper. That would be the concern because, once again, kind of like how the U.S. Secret Service secures a massive perimeter around the President of the United States, the Russian Secret Service also does about the same thing for Putin. And the entire area surrounding the Victory Day parade, I mean, he's within the perimeter of the Kremlin, which is a secure area entirely. And then he comes out of the Kremlin and then it sits down here, right in front of the walls of the Kremlin. So he's in a very secure area. Once again, all of the sightlines are secured. It's not like someone's going to be in the gun building shooting at him, because it's like the entire gun building is secured during this event. So is the State Museum over here. So is St. Basil's Basilica. No one's even allowed in that building during that time. So unless if a sniper was an absolute crack shot somehow, and was firing all the way from the other side of the Moskva River, and let me go see what kind of distance that would be. So you would have to fire in a straight line about a half-mile shot to actually even have a chance of hitting and killing Putin. And I'm pretty sure that those buildings would also be locked down as well because there would be a sight line. Beyond that, there is no way to get a sight line into Red Square that would be within range enough to actually make a reliable kind of a shot like that. And I gotta say, folks, I'm a pretty decent shot, but a half-mile shot is a pretty decently long shot right there. I mean, you know, that's an 800-meter shot. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, a Russian marksman could hit that kind of a shot. But at the same time, though, who's to say that that sightline isn't already obscured or locked down? And then if that sightline's obscured or locked down, there literally isn't a sightline into the area. So I would say that the idea of a sniper being the issue would probably be a little unlikely. I have a feeling it's probably more as a drone threat than anything that they're wildly concerned about, at least in my opinion. And so with that, we actually do have a poll on this at the moment about Zelensky saying he can't guarantee the safety of foreign leaders at the Moscow Victory Day parade, and a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And actually, it looks like it's a pretty mixed bag on opinions of this one as well. As some people are saying that Ukraine will attack the parade, others are saying that Ukraine will not attack the parade, and some people are saying it will be a nearby attack enough to freak them out, but not directly on the parade. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 34%, which is the most popular option, said that they believe that Ukraine is going to attack the parade with Putin not in attendance, actually, but with the troops from other countries in attendance, while 31% said that Ukraine will not attack the parade, and 28% said it will probably be a nearby attack to rattle them. And really on this one, it's a bit tricky to say this. All the indicators are pointing to the fact that it's probably more likely than not that Ukraine is going to try to attack the parade. But at the same time, though, with all the concerns in place for what that could mean for Ukraine as backlash, I still have a hard time believing that they would actually attack the parade itself. I'm going to say that maybe it'll be a nearby attack. That way they'll rattle the Russians and let them know that they are not untouchable, I guess you could say. But for Ukraine to go in and actually attack the troops in this parade, which is probably one of the most important days of the year for Russia when it comes to the military, I'll have to see that to believe it because I have some doubts about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I do believe that Ukraine will most likely conduct something during the parade. I'm not sure if it will be directly on the parade or somewhere nearby, but I have a feeling that considering that the People's Republic of China is going to be representing heavily during this parade with Xi Jinping in attendance as well as a PLA contingent, that an attack on the parade directly is highly unlikely due to possible collateral that would involve a possible head of state for the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Armed Forces. So for that reason, I'm largely doubting that there would be any kind of an attack like that, at least in my opinion. I think that there's a high possibility, however, that there could be attack within the second ring road perimeter, possibly at Moscow City or any other significant sites in that area, because that would seem to be well within Ukraine's reach and also cause possibly enough panic at the parade itself that it would stop it dead in its tracks and disrupt the entire thing without the possibility of any kind of collateral. So I think that that's probably what they would do instead. So I'd have to say they're probably going to conduct an attack nearby, but not directly on the parade due to fear of unwanted collateral. That would be at least my belief at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are also going to be moving on into the remainder of our news, which we still have a lot of it. We have been able to hear that the Russian Federation has been building up forces along the area of the Finnish border, as the Russians are developing military infrastructure and conducting organizational reforms near NATO's northern flank, especially near Finland, as news agencies from different countries have asked Emil about the topic, and he's also made a thread about it. But we can see here some satellite pictures, or at least a montage of them, showing the creation of new forward operating bases for the Russian Federation to base forces near to the area of the Finnish border. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has stated that they have transferred all of their AS-90s to the state of Ukraine, meaning that they no longer have any wheeled SPGs or tracked SPGs of the AS-90 type in the entirety of the British Army, and all of the remainders, or the remaining ones, are currently in operation with the state of Ukraine, which is actually pretty interesting because I've never heard of a single country in the world dissolving an entire tracked SPG category from their armed forces because they've given that many systems to Ukraine. So pretty interesting to hear. It was only 68 artillery systems, by the way. It's not like it was hundreds, but that's still quite a significant thing and pretty crazy to see. And a massive shout out for the British for doing that. Pretty impressive. But nevertheless, moving on from that, and on over into the good old US of A. We've been able to hear of some interesting developments here, as we have been able to hear that further Ukraine support is on the way. But before we do, I want to also address this poll really quickly, a little bit early on, but I wanted to make sure to get it before we just completely move on from the Victory Day parade while it's still fresh in everyone's minds. If Ukraine strikes Russia's Victory Day parade, do you believe Russia would launch a tactical nuke in return? And it seems as though a lot of people are saying that that would be a highly unlikely option, while some are saying it's a likely response, and others are saying that there's a 50-50 chance. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So only 18% of the audience said yes, a tactical nuke launch in return for an attack on Russia's Victory Day parade would be a likely response, while 59% said no, a tactical nuke would not be an option for Russia, and 17% said there's a 50-50 chance of it. And of course, Medvedev, who's the raging drunk in Russia, who's a nutcase and comes out and says all kinds of crazy threats against the Ukrainians on a daily basis, he came out and said that if the Victory Day parade is attacked, then Kyiv probably won't see May the 10th, meaning the next day. So to me, that sounded like a nuclear threat. And of course, he makes those on the regular. So nothing crazy or nothing new out of him. But so far, nobody's really said anything about it. But considering that May 9th is such a symbolic day for Russia, if the parade were attacked, with that being something that is televised quite heavily, I have a feeling that Russia would want to resort to those extremes in that scenario. And I think that it probably would be at least on the table. It would not be ruled out by the Russians, certainly not. Because that would probably be one of the most severe things that Ukraine could do anytime this year, outside of attacking the Kerch Bridge. So the Kerch Bridge, if it was attacked, probably would not invoke a tactical nuclear response. But if the Victory Day parade's attacked, then it might be at least a strong consideration. So I'm with the 16% that says it's a 50-50 chance. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm either with the 50-50% chance group or saying that it wouldn't be an option, because I think that if the Ukrainians did directly attack the Victory Day parade and there wasn't any Chinese collateral, and considering that Putin actually would not physically be in attendance, I'm sure it would incense the Russian public, and it would also enrage the Russian Federation as a whole. But I don't really think there would be a nuclear response as a result of that, because it wouldn't be existentially threatening the existence of the state, at least in my opinion. So I would say it probably would be unlikely that that would even be a consideration, or that there might be slightly a 50-50 chance, but I'm leaning more towards the 57% that said it probably wouldn't be an option, because I just don't really see a way that the Russians could actually justify the usage of a tactical nuclear weapon or a strategic nuclear weapon in response to that kind of a situation. It would be a really hard sell. Of course, a crazy thing, but still a really hard sell. I would say, in my mind, it would be equivalent in the Russian world to 9/11 to conduct an attack on the May 9th Victory Day parade. To them, it would look like that, because you would literally be attacking the military in the wide open in the middle of Red Square, so it'd be a pretty big and striking thing for most Russians. But still, we didn't nuke Afghanistan for harboring Osama bin Laden after 9/11, so I would still think that the Russians would possibly operate on a similar level, even if it was as shocking to them as 9/11 was to America, and they would just try and conduct a major drone and missile attack against Ukraine in response, but there really wouldn't be much more beyond that, at least in my opinion. Or they might actually use it to justify a full-scale mobilization, possibly. That's also a likelihood too. But with that, we are going to be moving on from that and getting on into the news from the United States of America, as we have been able to hear that Ukraine may receive $30 billion in aid from the U.S. this year after signing a subsoil agreement, meaning that this is the part of the soil that isn't really the soil, it's more like the clay below it, so it's the subsoil agreement. See what I did there, Matthew? See what I did? Get it?
What does that mean, though? Like subsoil agreement? They're going to mine the clay out of the ground? What does that mean?
I actually have no clue, honestly. Like, I think that's just another way of saying the mineral agreement. But yeah, I didn't really understand what it was meaning either. I was
okay. That would make sense, though, if that's just another term for the mineral agreement. So essentially, for interpreting that correctly, then and once again, the mineral deal's already been signed, by the way, so that's a done deal. So apparently, he's looking or anticipating $30 billion in aid in total from the United States throughout the rest of 2025.
It seems as though that is the case, and it's also $30 billion pretty much in humanitarian aid, not military assistance, because the $30 billion will be the American side's contribution to the Reconstruction Investment Fund. So it's not actual military equipment that's evaluated at $30 billion. It's more so $30 billion in cash, interestingly enough, to help them to rebuild the country. Now, I find that one to be a little interesting, Matthew, because wasn't it not that long ago that we said whenever the Ukrainian, well, we didn't say it, but there was a statement being made by some people, Tucker, who stated that when we gave the Ukrainians raw cash, oddly enough, there were more Bugattis roaming the streets of Kyiv. Like, wasn't that kind of like the prevailing mindset of some people recently? And now, instead of giving them military equipment earmarked at $30 billion in total, now we're actually going to be giving them cash equivalent to $30 billion total.
Yeah, Tucker just says bullcrap all the time. I think he at one point on Twitter he claimed that Zelensky has houses in every a ton of countries around the world, but yet he didn't name a single address of any of his houses to say exactly where they were. It's just junk for clickbait. It's all it is.
Dude, Tucker Carlson be like, Zelensky has a house in Port-au-Prince. It's like, I'm doubting that one. I'm doubting that one personally. Anyways, we were able to hear that Zelensky also stated that, and Ukraine will then give its half to the fund little by little, and this is an agreement. So it appears that the Ukrainians are expecting to get more humanitarian support this year than any other year marked so far in the war. So pretty interesting on that. But moving on from that and on into our next bit of news from America, we also got a really wild, interesting announcement today. This has been in the works for a while in the background, and we've also mentioned this on air a little bit, but this is the first time we saw the U.S. military officially unveil it as a Department of Defense initiative and not the initiative of a private company, but we were able to see a little sneak peek of the new Collaborative Combat Aircraft program, and it is a very interesting sneak peek for sure. Take a look at this. They're playing that Mustard music, Matthew, from the Mustard YouTube channel, where he goes, "This is the new Combat Collaborative Air Program," or
Oh,
something
it's not copyrighted.
hopefully it's not. That's why I just muted it. That's why I just muted it really quietly. But we can see them opening up the hangar. I don't know what that flag is up there. Do you know what that flag is, Matthew? Is what company that is?
Yes. That's the flag of Anduril, which is a private defense contractor that's founded by a guy who founded the Oculus Rift company making VR headsets.
Ah, yes. Somehow everything always goes back to making weapons of war. Texas Instruments, you thought they made calculators, but they actually made the first CLUs for the javelins. Nowadays they don't, but, Texas Instruments, they're out there doing the Lord's work. But anyways, we can see one of the prototypes for the Collaborative Combat Air Program, which is this thing right here. And just to explain really quickly, the Collaborative Combat Air Program is attempting to achieve a lot under a singular program, at least from what I was able to research today, but this specific drone being presented by Anduril, I believe, is supposed to be an AI air-to-air assistant for the F-47 for the large part, at least from what I was hearing, from what I was reading today. There is another version that's created by another company that looks slightly different than this one, that is supposed to be an air superiority fighter for the large part, but it also is drone operated by an actual man on the ground for the large part and assisted by AI, but not entirely operated by AI. This one's supposed to be largely operated almost exclusively by AI with limited human intervention involved. So a
Yeah,
pretty...
Anduril actually has their own AI proprietary system. I think it's called Lattice or something like that. It's a battle management system, and they have a suite of different weapons that go along with that computer program that controls all these different weapons. It's really cool. I've seen a demo of it. It's like if you open up on your webpage like Google Maps, it shows you where the weapons are in physical space. It shows you what targets they're engaging, and also it shows you the radar view of the entire area that you're protecting. And you can launch these AI weapons from simply from your laptop or something. So I think this weapon integrates maybe into that system.
That's pretty neat, actually. That's a really cool weapon system. But from what I was reading today, this thing is supposed to be the wingman of the F-47. As many people know, the F-47 is supposed to be operating as a singular aircraft. It's actually supposed to be operating as pretty much the brain of an entire flying air squadron. And these are going to be the wingmen of that F-47, these aircraft in particular. They're eventually going to be researched and developed enough to where it actually is able to work almost as a completely autonomous AI aircraft, which is a very interesting thing. I see a lot of people saying it's a joke, and there's also been a bit of a misunderstanding here that this is entirely an Elon thing. I've seen a lot of people saying, Elon and his stupid obsession with AI. I don't know if many people know this, but there's dozens of AI companies currently in the United States, and not only that, this is not even associated with Elon at all, and this has been in development for years, actually, along with the F-47. The development cycles for all of these things started back in about 2018, so quite a while ago. But what these are supposed to do is it's supposed to remove the need to be able to train pilots. So what is going to be interesting about this is that the Air Force will still have the same amount of air superiority pilots. So let's say right now that we have 400 of them, but Once they get trained on the F-47, those 400 pilots actually become far more than that. They actually become, and let me make sure to whip out a calculator here because all of y'all got an earlier review of how bad I am at addition, so I don't want to do the multiplication wrong. So those 400 air superiority pilots, say if they have 5 of these wingmen flying along with them, have become a 2,000 aircraft strong air superiority force overnight because of these aircraft. It is a very interesting kind of a development. I actually would say I'm entirely behind it because this kind of implementation of technology and AI development is actually going to be allowing the Air Force to field a far greater number of air superiority aircraft that are able to conduct interdiction missions in a full-scale war with far more firepower and far more aircraft in the air without having the need to pretty much bottleneck ourselves at how many pilots we're able to train and field in the skies, and also how many of those pilots end up getting attrited through death and injury throughout the course of a conventional war. So this is actually going to be a very major leap forward in the activities, developments, and the air doctrine of the Air Force, and I think that this actually has a pretty promising direction in it at this point for what we'll be able to do on into the future. So pretty neat little thing.
I just hope that there's still a human shot caller, hopefully, and hopefully it's not where the AI is deciding when to take the kill shots, because that would be a little bit disturbing. I think a while back the military had actually approved some plans to potentially let some type of computer system, such as AI, make those kill shots like that and decisions on that. But hopefully it's still human based when it comes to that.
From what we know, it will be, because this is supposed to be one of the wingman assistants of the F-47. So the wingman assistants will not really be able to do anything without getting some sort of general orders from their squadron leader, which will be in the F-47, which is a human. So if the squadron leader tells the AIs to open fire or engage specific radar targets, then they will actually engage and shoot down those targets, but only once they get authorization, at least from what I was able to find out earlier today from what this program is attempting to achieve.
Interesting. Well, I hope it's not AI making the decisions, because I don't want Skynet.
Yeah, we don't want the Terminator flying around up there, you know? Like, everything's grounded in America because there's a rogue one of these going around shooting down commercial airliners. That wouldn't be a great one. But anyways, moving on from that, pretty neat thing nevertheless. And moving on out of that and finally on into Ukraine and the actual frontline news, we have a lot of it. Moving on up into the Kursk area today, we were able to see a Russian tank being destroyed by Ukrainian FPV drones. Take a gander at this. It appears that this Russian tank had already been knocked out because we were able to see it was doing donuts in the field, which usually suggests that the driver had been killed at a prior date, but we can see that the vehicle has not been completely disabled, and this drone is coming in to finish off the job. When you see the drone lining itself up, we can actually see that this tank has a caption on the side.
What is that garbage?
It's something to something Demona, which I don't know what Demona is, but we can see here that the drone is just circling on around. Oh, we got a slideshow going on here. Oh, we got a slideshow going. Oh God, we got a slideshow going on here. Oh my Lord.
Also, I don't know why I just said garbage. Just then it came out kind of like I was like a Boston person for whatever reason. That was unintentional. I realized it ourselves. I was like, why did I say it like that? I have no idea.
What's this garbage doing here? I think this video has a glitch because it's not really loading past 30 seconds. The tank got hit and it blew up. We'll move on beyond it because we still have a lot to cover. And once again, time is short these days with how much we have to cover. But moving on from that and on into our location unknowns, we were able to get the casualty report for the past 24 hours. And one Bobcat!
Oh. Hey, we got one Bobcat skits here. That's better than none, but it's still kind of low. But it's 3,870 now. Very nice. But the lone Bobcat is nice to see, as Miss Disa mentioned. But Enforcer, tell us more.
And Miss Disa, keeper of the records, gave us a nice summary of the day's events. Artillery total is incorrect. Miss Disa's laying down the law here. 27,234, not 20,176 on May 2nd, plus 48 today. Another average day. Troop averages over 1,100 a day. AFV losses take the day off, while UAVs and vehicles doing better than the 7-day average. The lone Bobcat is nice to see, and that I can certainly agree with. But the actual breakdown for the day's losses is 1,170 Russian soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 121 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 50 artillery pieces, 126 drones, 1 cruise missile, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it actually is a pretty decent day, and I gotta say that is a very nice casualty report all in all. I also also saw Andy S say 1 million dead. This is not the dead, this is the casualties. So a lot of these are just wounded and they're alive. So about 1 million wounded and killed, not just, killed, because that number would be insanely high. That means that the wounded would actually be far higher. That means that the actual amount of casualties, because this is counting casualties, not fatalities, would be somewhere in the millions at this point. But wounded and killed together, it's creeping on up to getting really close to about 1 million. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on from the location unknowns and on into the rest of our frontline news, which we do have a decent amount of. Moving on into the northern front, we did get to see the Russians getting turned back by a couple of drones from the 3rd Brigade. We can also see them throwing in a nice classic Russian meme there of these guys like going 90 down a dirt road and like crashing the car. And we can see them hitting the APC dead on. And what nice editing there. That was some good editing. I like that.
That was good. And of course, they were holding a bottle of alcohol. It wouldn't be complete without that.
Man, no Russian driving is complete without booze and some car keys. Dude, in Russia, there's no such thing as driving under the influence. There's such thing as driving while sober, which is a crime. In Russia, you have to drive drunk. So you have to go to the pub and you have to drink up enough vodka, and then the bartender goes, "This guy is plastered. Get this man some car keys." And then they send you out onto the roads. But we can see them here.
Yeah, I've actually heard, yeah, it's illegal actually. If you get in the car and drive in Russia without vodka and without being absolutely soused in Russia, like you'll actually get pulled over and arrested.
Really?
No, not really.
In
theory.
In theory. But we see them hitting a grad in the trees. And we can also see them hitting that Lada. We also see them hitting this Kamaz, I believe it was. And hitting this T-72, I believe. It looked like one. And that T-80. And I couldn't tell what kind of tank that was. And that's the end of that clip right there. But wonderful to see, and great to know the 3rd Brigade was doing their work. Meanwhile, down near the area of Slavyansk, or more so in the Crimea Forest, we were able to see the 45th Artillery Brigade really putting down some work onto the Russians in the counter-battery operations, trying to silence those Russian guns. Here we can see the Ukrainians targeting the Russians while they try and hit their guns.
Oh, hello, comrade. Are you driving tank? Here, have this vodka and drink up before you press the gas again, Bliat. Make sure you're nice and snurful.
Here we can see the Russians undertaking a dangerous mating ritual. Here they try and become as inebriated as possible to impress the other sex of the Russians and their inebriated driving skills. Many will perish in this sort of an attempt, but nevertheless the brave will be able to find a decent, suitable mate. But moving on from that and further down the lines towards Vovtsirivka, which is close to the area of Zolotarivka and Vagnokamyanka, we were able to see that a Russian heavy grum was destroyed today. It was a 152mm Giansent. A Giansent B.
Comrade, you need to get out of the car and do a sobriety test, comrade. Oh, shit. Gets the Igor out, gets him out, has him walk straight. You're walking too straight, comrade. I don't think you're inebriated enough to drive. Sweating bullets. And take him to jail, Bliat. Oh, yes, take him to jail.
No, you would actually think that at this moment I'm about to be arrested and screwed, but funnily enough, I have 1,000 rubles, which is equivalent to about 5 cents in America, in my pocket, and I will bribe this police officer to let me go, for this is the Russian way. It's like no consequences either way.
Who could just resort to old-fashioned violence and bonk him over the head, actually?
Well, we could always end up, in some sort of live leak video online. It's like, that is always an option. You never know. But moving on from that down into the city of Toretsk, we got to see the unfortunate ruins of Toretsk today. I don't know why they had that intro to like that old, the one I'm talking about, Matthew, where like the movie intro at the beginning you hear
PHX.
Yeah, that one. I don't know why they started this video off like that, because it's about to show the literal ruins of a city.
That was actually designed to test the speakers on the woofers to make sure they were functioning properly.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. But that's the city of Toretsk as it exists today.
Oh, jeez.
It's pretty rough. Most of the city has been destroyed at this point from the heavy fighting the original offensive that the Russians made that pushed into the city, and the Ukrainian counteroffensive that is pushing them out of the city has really taken its toll on most of the buildings. A lot of them have been reduced to their foundations, and others are very close to being reduced to their foundations.
That's just awful. And the Russians would celebrate this as a victory.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it, is that they are celebrating this largely as a victory so far, like they have in Bakhmut and Mariupol and other cities.
What's crazy is when they like shell a place like this and they bomb a place, that how the trees just get absolutely shredded down to like twigs. Like it doesn't take the whole tree down; it just like shreds every leaf off the tree and every twig off of it. It's just like a big nub.
Yeah, it's really crazy that, with that. And also, unfortunately, that basilica was completely destroyed down there. We can also see this building was completely destroyed as well. That might actually be the Palace of Culture, which is kind of like their version of like a civic center in Ukraine and the former Soviet Union. We can also see a large amount of the residential areas were also destroyed almost entirely.
Looks like a humongous tornado came through here or something. It has the same look.
I'm not going to lie, man. This is actually very similar looking to North Birmingham.
Yeah, and that's not even devastated or anything. It's just like that.
Just abandoned, yeah. Like a lot of them like we went through North Birmingham today. I'm not even kidding or sarcastic with this. A lot of North Birmingham, which is where we are in America, actually looked like this because we drove through there today and looked at it because we were trying to get to a new rail yard to take a gander at it, and it was horrendous looking. Actually, it looked like that. But that is incredibly unfortunate to think that this is being caused by the scourge of war and not just urban decay like it is here in Birmingham. Meanwhile, we were able to see the Cord unit fighting in those streets below of the drone footage and continuing to try and drive the Russians out. Now we're going to be muting that. And also, can we please keep the politics out of chat, please? Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. This is kind of rule, not really a request, but rule, We don't have politics here. I thank you all for being concerned, but once again, exhibit your concern at next election. Oh, you see here them fighting inside of the dark basements of the buildings that we were just seeing that were nearly destroyed above them. You see them tossing a grenade out into the open skies above. The grenade went off. You now see them in the absolute pitch black of the basement. Some would say that this is where Hot Dog Man currently is.
Oh.
We can now see him climbing out of the basement as he tries to escape the Hot Dog Man and his hit piece videos.
Hot Dog Man would never make it in this environment because if he was trying to be a soldier, he'd be giving away his position all the time with all that moaning. Oh man. Oh man. Shut up, Leon. Shut up. You're gonna give us away. Oh man.
Dude,
oh man.
They'd say, pick up your rucksack. We have to go. He would go, oh man, I'm not doing manual labor. And then the whole area would get already like instantly because they'd be like, there's Ukrainians there. Get them. Man, Hot Dog Man wouldn't make it a split second, man. But we can see them laying down fire in the basements on the Russians. Here we can see
or they would tell them, listen, go over there and make sure that we hold the place down. Oh man, don't tell me what to do. I'm sick of you. I'm not listening.
Oh man, I'm gonna make a hit piece about you.
Waiter.
Another hit piece. We can see them here firing onto the Russians on the steps above. You see them moving on up, scanning the corners. They're doing this effectively, folks. They're not allowing there to really be any open spots that they're not checking before they move up. Really nice to see. When you see that apparently there's a couch on the staircase there that's being used as a blockade.
Oh, there's a little chuck in there.
Oh, a little grenade clearance there, and they're now going to be probably moving on in the middle of the dust-filled room. That's the one thing that's bad about throwing grenades indoors is that they create a lot of dust and smoke, and that ends up choking people a good bit, and also burning your eyes. We see them here once again back in the basement, continuing to try and clear out the basement rooms.
Also, do you know why they use red light, by the way? Do you know that answer?
Because it's not harsh on the eyes.
I really don't know. I was going to say the reason. I'm not totally sure about it, but I'm sure somebody in the military can explain why. I think it's not so bad. I think the red filter eliminates the problem with IR, like infrared, or maybe that is like infrared friendly, like for night vision or something. I'm not sure though. I think I might be butchering that. But if somebody's in the military, let us know.
Dude, I thought you were legitimately going to have the answer spooled up. I was like taking my best shot, and you're like, I really don't know. And I was like, oh damn it! I was looking for the answer. I was like, what is the answer to that?
Well,
Maybe,
I'll see. You usually know the answer, so I was expecting just to say it, and I'll just go along with it.
man, I didn't know that one, man. I was like, I don't really know actually. But we see them here continuing to shine the red light.
Someone said red light does not ruin your regular night vision. I think that was what I said as well. That was what I thought it was for. And apparently that red filter that you put over a light, it does do that according to the people in the chat.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I've never seen that. I've never seen that on a rifle though. Like you said, it's on the like tanks, like on the tank headlights. They'll put that filter on there like that. But I've never seen it like on a weapon light.
That's very interesting. Well, you see here that many people are talking about this. Also, I see some people have been asking the age-old question, who is the hot dog man? Well, they'll never be answered on stream. We'll never actually say who exactly the hot dog man is by name, but some people do know in the community, and they know that this guy is an absolute insane nut. Like, the guy, pretty much to give you all like the basic rundown to some people who haven't heard the story of Hot Dog Man before, was a mental nutcase that ran a smaller YouTube channel for several years in the process of us running ours, and continuously had his community harass, target, and threaten us for years here on this channel and our viewers and community for quite some time. That's why we don't give the name of the guy, because we don't want to give him any publicity that is unwarranted or unearned. But that is why the guy is the butt of jokes here on this channel, is because it was probably one of the most mentally deranged and sick people that we've ever had the misfortune of running into, and they ended up running a YouTube channel with about 60,000 followers. So, you know, an interesting story to that. But the guy's finally gotten his just desserts, because it appears that he's been run out of business by being a piece of shit, and now he's working at a gas station somewhere, most likely. So we're very happy to hear about that. We like to hear that every day, and we like to think about it. But anyways, nevertheless, we were able to see the Ukrainians hitting and destroying a Russian assault tractor near to the area of Pokrovsk today by the Rarograg unit. And we see them here hitting the assault tractor right in the front hood. Kablam.
Oh, look, it's the tractor. And F-16 is hitting the tractor.
Man, and it's got a little battery, but that tractor's got no battery after that hit.
Oh. Oh, look. It's gone.
And that thing's cooking, man. Like, jeez, man, that thing's putting out a lot of smoke to just be a tractor.
That's a tractor of smoke.
Man, absolutely crazy. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Very nice to see. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see them hitting some Russian vehicles here in this clip as well. And I see some people saying, trying to add a little bit into the Hot Dog Man story. So another interesting thing that we ought to tell y'all is that the Hot Dog Man ended up conducting copyright infringement on us years ago. In the efforts of his harassment. Like, quite literally doxed us on a couple of his live streams. Our house, well, not our house, it was our parents' house, because we were living in our parents' house at the time, where we lived, giving out our direct home address, and telling people to go and give us hell. Pretty much telling people to come and harass us in person if they could. And so we had people showing up that were pretending to be pizza men and all kinds of crazy stuff, trying to get in there to do who knows what. But anyways, eventually, the guy started running our streams, literally running our streams while they were live on his platform. So we did what anyone would do, and we started copyright striking him because he was violating our copyright without us giving him permission to do so. So then a whole bunch of people in the Ukraine war community, which we really aren't part of anymore because we're more of like a global news kind of a thing, decided to band together to defend him from getting punished for copyright infringement, which he was doing as an extension of harassment. And so then we had some larger names in the Ukraine war community sending their communities over to brigade us and also spreading pretty much slander about us, about we were just wrongfully attacking the hot dog man for no reason and trying to eliminate competition, when the reality is that we were actually trying to protect ourselves from a guy who was actively harassing us along with his community. So then after that, the copyright strikes, YouTube just lifted them out of the blue, although we clearly showed that there was an open lawsuit against him for multiple things. And so then his channel was allowed to exist. And then over the next year and a half from that, just to catch you all up with some of the story, over the next year and a half from that, everyone who came to his defense that said that what we were doing to him was wrong slowly had the hot dog man turn on all of them and start speaking stuff about them and then trying to harass them and then trying to have his community go and target them as well. And we already said that to those people back in the day. We were like, look, we're being harassed by this guy and you think you're helping this guy out, but he's going to end up doing it to you too. And he ended up doing it to every single one of them. But in short, we have almost nothing to do with really most, if not every other Ukraine war YouTube channel except for Denis Davidov and also, let's see, dang, who's the Civdiv? We have a little bit to do with Civdiv and Denis Davidov. They're pretty cool channels, but pretty much every single other one in the category we have absolutely nothing to do with, because they were all in support of the hot dog man in the middle of that. That might explain to y'all why we really don't have anything to do at all with anyone else who covers anything on the Ukraine war. But that's pretty much the whole story of who the hot dog man is in a nutshell, or at least how the hot dog man impacted this channel, and that's why he's still the butt of jokes to this day, even when his YouTube channel has pretty much died and has been dead for about a month or two now. But moving on from that, we were able to see multiple other vehicles being taken out in the Pokrovsk area by the Phoenix unit, which we can see right here. Oh yeah, also, Philip Fix has brought up a good one. Don't forget the swatting incident. Totally forgot that one. So if y'all want a little bit additional, we were in law school about a year ago, a year and a half ago nearly at this point, and we had gotten a tip from someone that apparently the Hot Dog Man's community was going to be calling up our law school and saying, and I'm going to tell y'all exactly what they were calling up and saying, that me and Enforcer Matt were going to go into the law school and commit an act of violence where there would be a multiple casualty incident, to put it in the most clinical terms I can. So I heard that, and I told Matthew, something doesn't seem right about this one. It seems like they're actually acting out on this one, so I think we better contact the campus authorities, the police on the campus, and inform them about this. And I'm lucky I did, because they actually were calling up and trying to get us swatted in the middle of going to law school that day. So we ended up actually having to file a police report. There was a whole thing going on with that. The hot dog man was trespassed from the campus, non persona grata, not even being there. He got trespassed, so if he ever showed up, he would be arrested on site. There was a whole thing that happened with that as well. Just in case you all are ever wondering, well, how bad did it get? We may have been shot by a hyped up, scared SWAT officer who may have shown up because they were being told a story that we were armed and dangerous and were about to commit an absolute act of violence in the middle of our law school. So, that's another thing to add on to that story, in case y'all are wondering, why in the world is the hot dog man always mentioned? You never forget somebody who does shitty things like that. You just never will. That kind of stuff will remain on your mind for the rest of your life, because I don't think anyone could be as sick as that guy ever. And I'm glad to see that his channel and his community is completely collapsed and that he's failing financially again, because someone like that ought to deserve to go to prison for a while for the stuff they did against us.
Oh my, what the hell is that thing scooting across?
I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know. But let's take a look at that thing again. I don't even know what that is. Is it like a golf cart?
Whatever it is, it's like wildly out of control. It's like just going fast as hell, like no control at all.
Man, I mean, honestly, and I don't even know what that was. It was like an armored hut, and then we can see them hitting what appears to be another outpost. We can see them hitting a Bohanka. And we see them now slamming them as well, over and over and over again. Take a look at that. And also, someone said, "Was Dennis Dunn a guest on your channel?" No, Dennis Davidoff has been a guest on the channel once before, and also we have a pretty good running relationship with Dennis Davidoff. He actually watches the show from time to time, along with Civdiv. Civdiv and Dennis watch our show occasionally, and we watch some of their stuff from time to time too. So we have a pretty mutual relationship with those two. But everyone else in the category, not so much. We have absolutely no dealings with them, and we like to keep it that way. But anyways,
We're cool. We're cool. Everybody's respectful though. Like everybody that has like mutual respect. Like we don't go around just picking fights with people like the Hot Dog Man did. The Hot Dog Man went around rage baiting people so that way he could try to get clicks and views because apparently he thought that was going to be a successful tactic, but it wasn't because his channel ended up dying. But no, like we don't have a problem with anybody in the category as long as they haven't like shafted us or tried to screw with us. But the only problem is, like someone mentioned, the category for whatever reason is extremely clicky, and I don't know why that is because it's kind of odd because most YouTube's not like that, but. For whatever reason, they like to click together in like a little click. So we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do that. And also, they like, just to say this, a lot of them are really politically driven. Like, you know, like, and I think that's become a little bit clear as time's gone by, but a lot of them are politically driven. And the Hot Dog Man, because he's also like if I could say that this guy is a political fanatic, he certainly is, because I believe he was like I think a lot of people can agree with this, that there are certain extremist groups on both ends of the political spectrum, and he was a prior member, if I'm correct, of Antifa. So he's a very politically kind of a driven person. So as soon as he didn't like us because he plagiarized our stuff and we called him out on it way back in the beginning because he was copying our thumbnails and titles of our streams, and I said, hey, I don't really like that, I wish that he'd stop. Once he decided that he wanted to go on the warpath, he had to say that we were the exact opposite of him, and considering that a lot of the Ukraine war community is politically motivated, a lot of them just jumped on the bandwagon of disliking us off the bat because it's an us versus them thing politically, although we are not political at all, and I really don't like either political party. They wanted to turn it into that. So then they created their little clique where it was, you know, pretty much everyone who is like, the best way to say it, like, the actual truth is everyone who was left-leaning is in this group, and everyone who is not left-leaning, even if you're pretty much centrist like we are, where we just don't pick a side, and then you're excluded from the group. That's, like, honestly, that's really why, you know, really no one has any dealings with them at all if you aren't extremely left-leaning or left-leaning. Like, that's just kind of the reality of it. Not making it a political thing, but that's actually the reality of the situation from what we can observe. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on up into Kyiv, because we were able to hear that Zelensky did actually propose a ceasefire that was shot down. Ukraine actually proposed that they would allow the Russians to enter into a ceasefire with Ukraine, a bilateral agreement, on May 7th, but it would be for 30 days. And if Russia doesn't agree, there will be no ceasefire that would cover the May 9th Victory Day parade. The Russians refused it immediately. So it appears that there will be no ceasefire on the May 9th parade. Isn't that interesting, Matthew? Now Zelensky is actually weaponizing the 30-day ceasefire concept to just keep on proving that the Russians really don't want to end the war. Because, funnily enough, the Russians actually did present Ukraine with a ceasefire arrangement that would only last 3 days, and it would start on the 7th and it would end the day after the 9th. So literally covering the parade rehearsals, the parade itself, and then ending right afterwards. So the Ukrainians refused that and counteroffered with a true 30-day, nearly 1 month long ceasefire that would be without preconditions, and the Russians refused it because they were only
it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting too, because at first Zelensky was super hesitant to go for the ceasefire because he had to really get he basically got beat down to get into it basically by the United States. So he eventually was like, okay, we're going to give it a try to appease the United States. Then he went into it, and then Putin said, hell no, we're not doing a ceasefire because we need X, Y, and Z. We need a full unconditional surrender before we agree to that. And Zelensky's like, oh, like they're never going to agree to a ceasefire. So now he's running with it and just beating the hell out of Russia with this one.
Yeah, I mean, he's just absolutely beating the hell out of him. He just keeps proving that they don't want a peace. They want the war to keep on going. And so that's an absolutely crazy thing right there. Absolutely insane. But nevertheless, that's the end of that little bit of news right there. Just want to throw that one out there for you. But before we move on into our last piece of news here, to get us on into the question segment, Ukraine has resumed several mass drone attacks on Russia in the last few days, primarily most of them being conducted on southern Russia and Crimea. And a lot of people are wondering what has changed about that. And it seems as everyone's agreeing that the U.S. has given them a green light to get back into the game, because Ukraine is in it for the love of the grind, baby. But beyond that, what are people thinking about this, Matthew, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we have seen over just the last few days alone, Ukraine's launched a back-to-back major drone attacks on Crimea and various regions of Russia, and we haven't seen it in this scale of an attack in quite some time. So it suddenly resumed just out of the blue. So what do you think has changed? 49% said the USA gave the green light to Ukraine to start attacking once more. 23% said Ukraine just decided that now is the time. And 19% said Ukraine was promised more aid packages, and now they're using the weapons that they had stockpiled up because they know they're going to get replenished. And I would say that I believe the USA gave them the green light because, of course, while the talks are going on, the United States, the way they're operating right now, is they like to tell the people they're negotiating with, let's stop all the attacks while we talk. And I assume that Ukraine was probably abiding by some informal ceasefire, at least from the United States end of things, by not attacking very heavily. But now, since the mineral deal has been signed and Russia is basically stalling negotiations and the U.S. is officially withdrawn from negotiations, now there's nothing holding Ukraine back. So Ukraine probably was given the green light and they're going all in. Now, I presume that these attacks are going to continue into the indefinite future now that the talks have officially fallen apart. But I'm with the 49%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 49%. I believe the U.S. did give them a green light due to the collapse of the negotiating efforts. I believe that we're just telling them to get right back to business and start bombing the Russians into submission again, and that's why all of these attacks have started in large scale once more. So that would be my belief. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And also, I saw some people trying to make it into a slightly political thing. Like, some people were saying, well, I'm, like, far left or far right. The thing is, folks, here's my thing. I don't care what political opinions viewers have. Like that's not to be rude. I just don't care. It's not my business to know your political opinions, and neither is it for you all to know mine. My job here, at least as far as this channel is concerned, is to provide you all with the news of what's going on in the world. The only kind of thing that we pick a side on is picking the side, as far as our analysis is concerned, on saying what should happen that would be the best for American and Western interests. And that's really the only decision we like to make on this channel, or really the only bias we like to show, is being pro-American and pro-Western. And that's actually absolutely it. I really have absolutely no interest at all in getting involved in modern day party politics or modern day political rhetoric. I find a lot of it to really be nonsensical, to be entirely honest with most folks, and I generally do not like the kind of political discussions and dialogue that are had out there, even amongst people who are agreeing, because I feel like a decent amount of it is just it doesn't really, it's not really found in reality. It's more so found in beliefs and opinions that aren't necessarily founded by fact, or at least a good understanding of how our mechanical world really works. So that's generally the reason why we're not political on here. I'll just be entirely honest with you. I don't really feel like this hurts anything as far as our political bias. I am not an independent, but I also don't lean right or left. I like to just entirely stay out of it and watch it from a third party perspective. And I'll call shots as good or bad depending on whose side they come from. That equally, kind of like we've done here on the channel. I live my life like that to a T. So if people are far left and far right here, I'm entirely fine with y'all being here, as long as y'all don't turn it into a political thing, as long as y'all aren't trying to push some sort of a political opinion. Because at the end of the day, y'all's opinion is y'all's opinion. Most people are never going to be changing their opinions, and those opinions will be represented the most at the polling booths in the next, well, not really the polling booths, but the election booths in the upcoming next election. And that's really the only time that people's political opinions matter, and even then you can keep them to yourself, because all you do is jot down your vote on a ballot, slip it into a box, and then you walk away. And that's largely how politics is run. That's how it should be run. And so I don't really like making this thing entirely political, and I also don't like the idea that there are a decent amount of people out there here on this channel that take a lot of our words with its weight in gold. Not a grain of salt, but its weight in gold. And I don't really like the idea of people using larger voices like ours would be to try and influence people who may not really know what they even should be deciding, and possibly leading people to take decisions that may not be the best for them. For some people, voting for a Republican candidate is actually the best option for them, and for others, people are voting for Democrat candidates, and those are actually the best options for them. But I feel like individuals should largely be free of sway from larger voices that they would trust, because those larger voices may be telling them to make decisions that in their particular instance may not be best at representing their interests as much. And for that reason, I believe that people should largely be devoid of larger voices like ours telling them what they should believe, and they should be making these decisions entirely on their own through their own research and analysis. That's largely what my opinion on it is. So that's why, while I was talking about the hot dog man thing and largely explaining the motives, that's not to say that I have anything against Democrats or Republicans, for that matter. I really just don't like the rhetoric on either side, and I completely stay out of it. But that was the reality of the situation that we were dealing with. And because most of them were left-leaning, they would like to try and portray our channel as a far-right leaning channel, just for the specific idea of trying to disenfranchise our position that we have taken as a staunch hardline stance of being completely politically neutral over the course of the entire conflict, and also over the course of our entire news coverage for years at this point. But with that, we are going to be moving on from that and on into the last piece of news that we have, which is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Готуємось до важливих зовнішньополітичних подій, зустрічей, перемовин. Головне – можливість партнерів вплинути на Росію, щоб вона пішла на повне припинення вогню, на тривалу тишу, яка дозволить шукати рішення, щоб вийти з війни. Зараз ніхто не бачить такої готовності Росії. Навпаки, вся їхня внутрішня риторика, скоріше мобілізаційна. Російські пропагандисти продовжують погрожувати і не тільки Україні, але й іншим сусідам Литві та іншим країнам Балтії. Власне, це те, про що ми давно говоримо. Без тиску на Москву Росія продовжить воювати. Зараз, звісно, економічні умови в Росії більш несприятливі. Через ціну нафти ціна стала нижчою, але це ще не такі умови, щоб Росія відчула війну як фундаментальну проблему для себе. Тому санкції світу, санкції проти енергетики російської, проти банків точно можуть допомогти миру. Ми говорили про це з партнерами. Ми знаємо, що партнери нас почули. Наближаємо дії. Готуємо наші санкційні пакети, зокрема проти суб'єктів та схем в третіх країнах, які, на жаль, допомагають Росії обходити частину санкцій. І продовжуємо зміцнювати нашу оборону. Очікуємо вже незабаром вагомі оборонні пакети для України та рішення щодо подальшої співпраці. Співпраці у час війни з ключовими країнами і у післявоєнний час. Готуємо серйозні основи для відбудови. Водночас ми готові якнайшвидше, хоч від сьогодні, переходити до припинення вогню, якщо Росія готова до дзеркальних кроків, до повної тиші, до тривалої тиші, щонайменше на 30 діб. Це чесний термін, коли можна підготувати наступні кроки. Росія повинна зупиняти війну і припинити штурми, припинити обстріли. Станом на зараз інтенсивність російських ударів не свідчить ні про що, окрім російського бажання і далі воювати. Кожної ночі під сотню шахедів. Тільки за один цей тиждень від понеділка по суботу вже більш ніж 950 російських авіабомб. Щодня інтенсивні бої на Покровському напрямку, на інших Донецьких напрямках. Ми відповідаємо по всьому фронту, а також на території Курської та Білгородської областей, де зберігається наша активність. Я дякую всім нашим воїнам, дякую кожному нашому підрозділу за хоробрість та за стійкість. Я дякую нашим хлопцям, які нарощують українські далекобійні можливості і у небі, і на морі. Блискуче було збиття російського військового літака з нашого морського дрону. Доказ українських спроможностей. Дуже влучно наша армія провела операцію по військових об'єктах на території Криму. Мінус ще один, другий російський літак за добу. І також знищені військові склади. Кожен, хто працює заради того, щоб Україна могла відбиватись від окупанта, кожен, хто розробляє та впроваджує для України нові технологічні можливості. Всім вам я дякую. Дякую і тим, хто у світі з нами, з Україною. Дуже важливо, щоб всі наші партнери не мовчали, продовжували закликати Росію до припинення вогню, також, щоб не тільки публічна дипломатія, але й робота у тиші кабінетів в ключових столицях допомагала зміцнювати думку, що саме тиск на агресора і захист України є ключовою передумовою настання миру. Обов'язково маємо захистити свою незалежність, свою державу, майбутнє для всіх українців. Слава Україні!
And Ram
And
Slava.
Hiram Slava. And
with-
have you even said thank you at least once? I mean, you haven't even said thank you. He said thank you. There you go.
He did it. He did the thing. He did the thing. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that is wrapping up our entire news segment for day 1165 of the news from around the world. And what a news segment it was. It took us an entire 2 hours and 13 minutes, really 2 entire hours to get through the whole thing. But I am absolutely proud to say that we were able to get it through with all of y'all. We have had about 100,000 views over the course of that entire news segment so far, and I got to thank you all massively once again for watching and choosing the Enforcer channel to be your premier YouTube channel. Of course, we can always tell you to never fly American, but always watch Enforcer, because it is a absolutely great channel, and I'm very biased in that because Matthew and me run this thing every single day, and it's kind of our livelihood. But beyond that, I do thank you all so much once again for watching, and I also got to say a massive thanks to everyone who has subscribed so far as well. We've gotten about 80 new subscribers over the course of the stream, which is massive actually for live streams. We don't really get a lot of subscribers from live streams at all usually. In fact, we hardly gain any. Usually we get subscribers from videos. So I got to thank everyone for subscribing tonight so far throughout the stream, and I hope that this stream has met a high quality of news coverage, research, and information that has been able to be relayed to y'all over the course of the past 2 hours alone. But with that in mind, I hope that you all stick around, because we are going to be moving on into this second question. Well, it is actually the second question segment, where we will get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, hopefully as much as we can. We do have to get to the super chats first for all of our new viewers here, because we do not have any ads that run in these streams. The only way that we're able to financially support ourselves and do this as our full-time job running these shows is through the direct generosity of viewers who take it upon themselves to support the channel. Nobody has to, and we make that incredibly clear. We never want anyone to feel like they're compelled to, but the folks who do make this thing a reality for about the 100,000 people who have watched the stream so far, and we always want to make sure to give them a huge thanks and address their questions first, because if it wasn't for those specific people, we would have never been able to make this channel possible and keep it running for years at this point. But once we get through all the super chats, we will be trying to address as many live chat questions as we can, and I got to thank you all massively once again for being here tonight, whether you are supporting or not, because we are always happy to be able to tell the news to as many people as we physically can. And so with that, Matthew, what do we have? What do we got?
So what we have is the final question segment of the night, and we are fresh out of polls, as you might have noticed. No more polls to address tonight, so we're jumping straight into our super chat questions segment of the last part of the stream. So jumping right into it, this one, the first one, goes to Mr. Glock, who's there, LSA, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that $50 support and being a longtime channel legend as well. And Mr. Glock says, the LSA needs to hold a contest to guess what date the losses reach 1 million, and the winner gets to meet the enforcers and make a guest appearance on the stream. Oh, and what say you, enforcers and LSA?
I gotta thank you for the support, Glock, who's there. That is an interesting idea. It's just that the issue would be fulfillment of that, because I think if someone won from Australia, we'd have to get them like a plane ticket, fly them over here, and get them a hotel, which might end up being prohibitively expensive, actually. But that would be an interesting idea if we could pull it off. But certainly an interesting one, nevertheless. I also don't know how we would let someone guest on the stream, because like, this is how it actually worked behind the scenes. I feel really bad about this. We bring them on for like maybe 10 or 20 minutes, and then they just sit around for like 2 hours in our house until we're done. And then by then it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I feel really bad for those folks, because it wouldn't be like the kind of behind the scenes experience where we get to chit chat and actually talk with them, because we'd be in the middle of working. But that is still not a bad idea. It would be a neat one if we actually could pull it off. But I think that might be a little bit too expensive, especially if someone won overseas. And also, especially if we brought them here, then they would kind of just be sitting around like a bump on a log for a couple of hours while we did the rest of the show. But still, I hope that does address that the best I can. I do thank you for the support, though, and helping the channel keep running. But it is a cool idea when we don't actually think about how to actually implement that on the mechanical side of things. I like the idea, though. I like the spirit behind it. It is a pretty good one. But with that, I do thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one is going to go to Bruce Grant. And Bruce puts in a 30. And thank you very much, Bruce, for that $30 support as well and helping to keep the channel running. And Bruce said, I've been a long-time viewer and member of the LSA since the fourth day. And wow, he's old guard, by the way. He said, hurrah, and first-time caller. And why hasn't Ukraine done Moldova a solid and taken Transnistria? And that would give them many benefits. No. And thoughts. And Slav Ukraine and Hiram Slav.
And Slav Ukrainian, or Slavic. Thank you for being an old guard. That's a first-time caller tonight. Hey, that's pretty cool, actually. I gotta thank you greatly for that. And the answer to your question is actually a lot more difficult than you'd think, because I've actually looked into that before, and it has a lot to do with international law, because technically Ukraine does not recognize Transnistria as a separate entity from Moldova. So if Ukraine conducts military action in Moldova without really confiding in the Moldovan government, technically what they're doing is they're invading Moldova itself instead of Transnistria in dealing with the Russian threat. They could ask for the Moldovans to give them permission, but that would be a pretty long, drawn-out sort of a diplomatic process that would allow the Russians to get the upper hand in that kind of a situation and attack the Ukrainians first to be able to preempt the inevitable Ukrainian attack at that point. So it generally is the fact that the diplomatic red tape makes that pretty tough to do without violating the sovereignty of Moldova by technicality, or allowing the Russians a window to attack the Ukrainians from Transnistria first, which could start causing a decent amount of issues if they were to try and conduct that. That's generally the reason why I've been able to see that they haven't done that yet, and Moldova really hasn't dealt with them either, and with the Ukrainians helping them out, is for those reasons, at least from what I can tell right now. And so with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And that was a very good question, by the way, but that's the best answer that I could really give on that one, because beyond that, there really is no physical limitation to Ukraine doing that. They could easily wipe them out inside of Transnistria and pretty much ensure that Moldova wouldn't have to deal with a fake state inside of their own borders. But it seems as though the diplomatic red tape is what's been holding them back. And it's also been what's stopping Russia from conducting that attack, because if Russia conducted that attack from Moldova's borders, then that kind of does give Ukraine at least a legal reason, internationally legal reason, whether Moldova would approve them or not to do this, to actually go into Moldova and deal with the Transnistrians and the Russians that are there. So that's also why the Russians haven't attacked the Ukrainians from the area of Moldova. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to answer great questions like that, and we wouldn't be able to talk to an old guard that is a first-time caller tonight. And I like that you put it as a first-time caller. That kind of is giving me flashbacks to C-SPAN and all the crazy stuff that would happen when they would have callers. You know what I'm talking about, Matthew.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I know.
Oh,
That's
my God.
honestly, my concern when I first heard the idea, and also, by the way, I think it's a good idea, by the way, but we have to factor in as well that some people that might enter the contest to be on the stream could be bad actors, people that want to take the channel down. That could be part of it. And all they would have to do is get on the air and say one really foul word that's prohibited, and then our channel would be permanently removed from YouTube, and there would be no appealing that. So that's the only concern we've ever had with bringing a guest on or somebody that we're really not sure who they are, is because maybe they would do something like that if they were a bad person and try to take the whole channel out of action.
Man, they could pull Papa John, Paula Dean, and we'd be off the air for good, folks. Like that's like that, like, but that's like the actual reality of it, and that's not even far out of the picture. That's a very big concern of ours, is that if we have someone on the channel, like who's actually on a microphone that we really can't control at that point, and they have the ability to say whatever, we could have an absolute disaster on our hands. We could literally be looking at the end of the channel at that point, because if they say something like a Paula Dean or a Papa John or something like that, we are over. Like because YouTube has a very, very strict rule on that. That's not even a strike. That's quite literally channel deletion nearly at that point. So that's why we generally would have some reservations on doing that as well, because everyone who would enter that kind of competition might not be really wanting to meet us. They might be wanting to end our whole thing for the large part. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. Because that would be something. That would be something for sure. But anyways, with that, also Glaggle who's there said, okay, the winner just gets an LSA coffee mug. Actually, that wouldn't be that bad of an idea. That's actually realistic.
That's a big downgrade from being as a guest like on the stream. It's like, okay, you don't get to be on the stream, nor do you get to fly here like free of charge. Here's a coffee mug. It's like, that's not the same thing. But honestly, though, I think the risk, like seriously speaking, would simply be too high to bring a guest on like that. While we would love to like have a perfect world where we knew people wouldn't be sick like that, someone, knowing our luck, probably would come on that was sick like that and end up doing something to take the whole show down intentionally. And that would be a shame for the channel to go out like that.
Yeah, there really would be. And also, this is our livelihood, so it would be kind of a bad way to end our careers for the large part at this point, too. But with that, I hope that does address that. Also, someone said a bit paranoid. You would think that until you saw all the C-SPAN callers, because the C-SPAN callers come in and then they say the craziest stuff. And also, you would think that until you've seen like just wild card guests that have been brought on other shows, and then they do stuff like that. It's not that out of the realm to say that that could happen. Like that's not at all really being paranoid. If you're in our position, that's a reality of life, is that if you have someone that hasn't really been pre-vetted before coming on a show significantly, then there could be some problems. And there's really no way to pre-vet those kinds of winners, because if they win, they win. There's no way to vet them and pick one that would be good. That person could be, that person could be like the leader of Antifa or the Proud Boys or something and come on and say some of the craziest stuff that we've ever heard, and it's like, we kind of wouldn't want to run the risk of that. But anyways, and also some people say that's a little bit paranoid. I don't know if y'all know the kind of life that we've lived in the background of this thing. I mean, we had people, folks, that would come up to, this was like years ago, that would come up to our parents' house and try and get in by saying that they were working for the pizza company and they had a pizza delivery, and then we would call the pizza company they claimed they were from, and they would say there isn't even a pizza delivery man that's out there right now that is even trying to fulfill an order to our address. So these are just random people trying to get into our house to do God knows what. There are a lot of crazy people out there all the time, and so we kind of have to be geared up to think, in the worst case scenario, what would these crazy people do if that ends up being one of those people. So we kind of have to work on that and be as safe as we can. And that's another thing. It's like, who's to say that we, bring because we don't run a studio, this is run out of our house. We bring them to our house, and now we've doxed ourselves to an actual fan, so they know where we live now. And then not only that, who's to say that they may not be concealing a firearm on them or something worse, and then they end up trying to commit a homicide or something. You never know. Like those.
Or what if we bring them to the house and then they come in and they eat all of our food and then they leave later? Like then we're starving because we're all out of food.
Yeah, I mean that could be an absolute disaster right there, because we only go to the grocery store like once every 3 weeks, and that's with like security and everything. I'm just kidding, by the way. We only have about 10 security guards. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat is going to go to Howard Mendelson, who puts in another super chat. And thank you very much, Howard, for the second support of the night in a 50. And we appreciate that. And Howard said, have the winner on the show remotely.
And I thank you for the support, Howard Mendelson, and that's an idea as well. That's an idea. We could possibly look into that, and I'll have to try and consider that. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Howard, because that is an interesting idea to work around it. And I gotta thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, but that still doesn't solve the live mic issue. And then a lot of people are saying pre-recorded. But we, like, in running a YouTube channel for 3 years and running live streams for 3 years, myself in particular, Matthew's actually really good with making thumbnails and titles for videos. He's actually better than me at that. But as far as making thumbnails and titles and trying to figure out how to keep retentions on streams, because while we are covering the news, we do have to make sure that this channel can survive, so we have to make it entertaining for folks. I've gotten a pretty good grasp on what people like and what people don't like. And one thing that I found out that
people... boy's the stream master.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty good at it. Matthew can say I am pretty good at it. But the thing is, the issue is that with pre-recorded segments, people do not like pre-recorded segments on live shows. People like things to be live. So if we do a pre-recorded segment and then we just ran it, then we would have the issue of a lot of people wouldn't even stick around to listen to it. In over 20 minutes, we would probably bleed about 70% of the viewership if we did something like that. So there's a decent amount of kind of technical issues with that as well. So there's a decent amount of issues with actually trying to pull that off. We could do that for like say a Patreon exclusive possibly, but as far as it actually being on a live show, the live show runs on a really kind of a tight sort of a system, schedule, itinerary, and the way we actually perform it, to where there isn't really a lot of flexibility in it these days, because we've figured out how to fine tune it and have it running like a sewing machine most every night. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and I thank you once again. Also another thing that people there's a decent amount of issues. Like I'll just put it at that. There's a decent amount of practical issues that we'd have to try and overcome to do that, and it would be at a very short notice at this point, because they're probably going to surpass 1 million casualties in just a couple of days. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, some people are asking, there's a couple of people that are asking us over and over and over. They said, why don't y'all bring like normal guests on, like other YouTubers? Honestly, if we're being totally honest here, and I don't want this to come off arrogant, because I'm not intending it that way, but the honest to God truth is we really don't need guests. We're standing pretty good on our own 2 feet, and most people bring guests on to try to boost their channel or try to get that person's subscribers. That's what several people did with us when they wanted to come on our shows. They simply came on one time to go and try to snag as many of our audience members as they could over to their channel, and then they ghosted us after that. So that's the reason why most people on YouTube end up doing that. Now, there are people on YouTube that generally like actually want friendships with other YouTubers, that want to like actually get to know them and sort of have a mutual relationship like that. But unfortunately, in this category, it doesn't really work like that. So we've learned and we've adapted from it. And also, thankfully, all y'all are fascinated with us too, so we don't have to bring on other people to try to be a crutch for our show. So that's a good thing.
Also, from another business perspective, because we run the show and we love to run the show the way we do. But I do want to say, just to have a little bit of a disclaimer here, our show is in the top 100 almost daily in America for the top live streams, and that's taken a decent bit of figuring out how to actually make sure on Matthew's end and my end how to run the stream as seamlessly as possible and actually make it fun for people to be here and actually make the news interesting enough that people will want to keep showing up. It's because it is a business after all, and this is how we make our living, so we have to make sure that people are actually happy with us. And one thing that we actually learned back when we did guest segments or we had guests on some days, is that those shows would do the worst. Funnily enough, having guests on is actually horrendous for retainment, because the kind of system that we're running a news show. So a news show largely revolves around us putting out the news, telling the facts of the day, and then giving analysis and opinions on top of those facts. That's how our show runs for 2 straight hours. And then after that, we get into a question segment where we just get to talk about whatever with you all, and then really kind of go, wild on the hog, or ham on the hog, if you want to call it that, for the remainder hour and 30 minutes. And so when we bring a guest on, and they're here, they're actually completely messing up our format, because we're not able to get to the news, because we're having to not only engage all of y'all while running the show, we're also having to engage a third-party person who's also on air with us simultaneously. And so we're not actually able to cover news, and on top of that, all of the analysis is now being doubled in length, and then a lot of people really don't like that, and so they don't watch for long, or they don't come on once they see that there's a guest in the title. So there's been a decent amount of issues like that in the past, and we've had some amazing guests on in the past before, and we've also had some incredibly terrible guests on in the past before. But generally, the running theme was, no matter who the guest was and whether we liked them or not, was that it was very bad for retention, and it actually would end up hurting the show in the short term, because people would think it was more like a talk show than a news show, and we were a news show 100%. So I hope that also addresses that well. Also, another thing is that we got burned more times than we just did fun things with guests in the past as well, because we have had, if I count them out, we've had at least about 4 guests actually 5 guests on the show before, and out of those 5, we only have a good running relation with one of those guests now. 3 years later, about 2.5 years later at this point, and that's Dennis Davidoff. Dennis Davidoff is the only guest we've ever had on our show that we're on good terms with, and he's on good terms with us, so that's the only guest. The rest of them we are not on good terms with. One guy came on and deliberately tried to use his segment to sabotage our show. Like, we asked him about the war in Ukraine, and he started telling us about pig nipples in the cemetery. I'm not even kidding. That was like a thing that happened, and we were just sitting there, and he was going on for 10 minutes about this, and we were like, that isn't even anything related to the question we asked him. What is he talking about? And then another guy who was a YouTube channel that had 50,000 subscribers at the time, we bring him on. We promote his channel heavily before he comes on. He ends up getting up to 75,000 subscribers just within the week after being on our show, and we're largely assuming it's because we promoted him heavily. And literally the next thing he does is he becomes a guest on another show and then immediately starts crapping on the format that we had and bringing him on, although that was a big part of growing his channel. So then we just completely axed that guy and never really talked to him again. And on top of that, he ended up turning on us pretty badly during the whole hot dog man thing later. Then, let's see, another guy just was just ran us around the ringer. Like he invited us onto his show, and I went on there solo, which is a bit of an issue because it's a co-host sort of thing. Me and Matthew both run the show together, so why not bring us on as a group? And then I think. Yeah, that was Matthew. Matthew did not like that, and I'd like. And looking back on it, it wasn't a good thing at all. But I was like, look, it's fine. We're going around, we're exposing the channel, so in the end, it'll help out both of us. But anyways, then we brought him on to our show, and then later on, we tried to invite him on again. And then he said that he was busy that day, and then on that very day, he's running a show, and it's like, okay, so you just didn't want to come on. You could have just said that. So there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of good reasons why. And I've seen some people trying to suggest other folks, but I just generally want to avoid it because in a lot of categories, YouTubers get along well. Like I've seen a lot of categories where there are a lot of YouTubers that are in the same category that are actually friends with each other, and I really respect those categories. I like to think that we could have been friends with folks, and that was my original idea running this channel, is that we could build friendships with the other folks who are in kind of originally it was the Ukraine war news category, and now it's really just global news that we cover here, and we could generally be friends with them. But the thing is that there are a lot of incredibly fragile and massive egos in this kind of a category. And so it's simply not easy to become friends with these people because one day they're smiling and talking with you, and the other day they're putting out a hit piece on you on their community page and having their entire community brigade you overnight. Which, that's just how it's been for most of them. So the honest truth is I really don't trust anyone outside of Sivdiv and Denis Davidov in this category at all. Like, at all. We don't want to talk to them. We don't want to have any dealings with them. And I really don't even want to meet any of them that we really haven't talked to at all yet. Like, that's just my impression. If someone wants to approach us and reach out to us, totally fine with speaking to them and trying to become friends with them, or at least have some sort of camaraderie that we're both covering world news or Ukraine war news. But beyond that, we just really don't want to have dealings with most of them, because our experience is that a lot of them are very two-faced, and some of them are also really skeezy, and there's a lot of questionable things that have gone on over the years about some people who end up doing things that we find questionable with money. Because we, like we've always done, we're very transparent about where things go. You could support us directly, or you can support a fundraiser on Sunday. We make that a very clear distinction. Other channels have tried to deliberately blur the distinctions between that about where the money's going. You just give them the money and it ends up somewhere, either in their pocket or somewhere else. And I really do not like the lack of transparency that some YouTube channels have in that kind of a broad description of that sort of a situation. I don't really like that. And there's one channel that actually has been on here, and they have an active merchandise store, and it says at the bottom of it that some of the proceeds of the purchase go to Ukraine, but they don't list a specific percentage or anything. So it's like, well, how much is it? It could be just 1%, or it could be 0.5%. It's like for the sale of a $40 hat, 5 cents go to Ukraine from that hat, and that allows them to say that. It's like that's a very kind of a non-transparent, really shady sort of a thing that we've seen from a couple of people. And we're like, well, not just I'm really like, and Matthew's really like this as well. That seems very questionable, and we don't really trust that, because it would not be long before the lid comes off on that, possibly, and it actually turns out that they were pretty much lying about what they were doing in support of Ukraine or anything else. So with that, hope that does address that well. Not trying to throw shade and start beefs, but just giving you all the honest lay of the land here about why we do certain things certain ways here on the channel, because there are a lot of really business and moral oriented points as to how we've been maneuvering and running this thing for many years at this point. And so with that,
also, I don't know if it's just me, but I find it distracting to have to deal with other like guests and stuff, because every channel is unique in its own right. Like the people on there, like the host, have their own presentation style, they have their own personalities, like we do and other channels do. And when you try to like split your attention between running your own channel in your own unique way, and then trying to incorporate other people like temporarily into it, to me, that's distracting, like very distracting. In my opinion, the best channels there are, like especially in this category, are the ones that stand on their own 2 feet. Like for example, Denny's channel. Denny stands on his own 2 feet. He doesn't bring guests on, and he doesn't appear to really lean heavily into the idea of guests. I think he's had like a couple of guests on during his entire channel's history, kind of like us actually. And generally speaking, I find his content a lot better than the entire category, to be perfectly honest, because he's not leaning so heavily into I need to go like bring in the entire category to help me and boost me and crutch me and stuff like that. So no, that's just what I think personally.
Also, I saw someone say, "What percentage do you give to Ukraine?" Me personally, I've personally put in, because I usually put in $100 every single Sunday on the fundraisers. I've personally put in, I think over the years, I don't even know. It's well over $20,000 at this point over the course of 3 years that I put in over all of the fundraisers that we've run here on the channel to support nonprofits that are helping out in Ukraine. And then when we ran a merchandise store, because we try and be as transparent as possible, we would say that 10%. What was the percentage, Mandy? Wasn't it like 10% of the profits?
I'm pretty sure it was 10%, but we posted receipts every single time we would make the donation.
So we would give like a specific clarification of what it was. Instead of just saying some of your money goes to Ukraine, which is very indescript and honestly is very scammy sounding, we would say 10% of the profits of your purchase will go to supporting United 24. And so then we would get all of the totals of how much profits we made in the merchandising, and then we would go and donate that 10% of all those profits to United 24, and we would post the receipts to that on our Patreon, on our Twitter, and on our YouTube community page to make sure that that was as transparent as it could physically be. So that's how we ran it, and that's what we did. I mean, that's the actual way to do it, to make sure it's transparent and for people to not have to trust you, but to know you're doing the right thing. And even if they trust you or not, they're able to just physically see the proof. And other people don't do that, and that's something I find really questionable. There's one guy out there whose entire channel is primarily about Ukraine mattering, and they're kind of the ones that I've seen that have been the biggest offender on not having a clear clarification in their merchandise store about what percentage of the profits actually are donated to the United 24 or some sort of nonprofit benefiting Ukraine. That really would be like, that's something to me that throws up a red flag. This is like, if we're being transparent here, it should say a direct percentage of the cost or the profit made off of that specific merchandise item, and also show receipts, possibly monthly, to show that that's actually happening. That would seem transparent to me. But
I don't know why. I don't know why people don't do anything, just like that. Like, we posted receipts for the donations because we were skeptical about the other people that were claiming they were donating a percentage of the money to these charities from their merch sales. I was like, it would be nice just out of just like courtesy if they would post receipts, because it's kind of like a bit of a like honor system thing going on here that they're actually making donations. So I'm like, we can solve all that and undercut everything by simply posting receipts every time we make the donation. Because what's the problem with doing that? It's just transparency. And some people seem to get offended by that. Like, oh, how dare you question my honesty and make me post a receipt? I'm like, nobody's questioning your honesty. They just want to see the proof, because people lie.
Man,
so I don't see what the problem is with that.
I like how a lot of those people, I want to put this out there because this is something I covered earlier, and I like to point out hypocrisies from time to time. A lot of those people say that cops are untrustworthy and that they should all have body cams on and all publish the footage, so that way these cops aren't going around, conducting a Rodney King or something like that, just beating up some guy on the side of the street. But then at the same time, when you ask them to show receipts for what they're actually saying they're doing, then they act offended that you don't trust them. It's like, well, what do you think about the cops that you're saying have to publish their body cam footage and have it on running all day? It's like, you're saying you don't trust them. It's like, in the world we live in, I think it should be expected that you should be as trustworthy as possible to people, but you shouldn't be having to make people lean on your trustworthiness to work with you. You should be very transparent and clear on what you're doing, so that way they never have to trust you. They just know you're doing the right thing, and there's the proof and the receipts to show it. That's my opinion on that. Like, I don't really think trust should even come into the equation at all. It should be transparent enough to know that you don't even need to trust them, because all of the facts, the papers, and the receipts are showing that they're doing the right thing anyways. That's what I think. But, that's my opinion. That's how we run our show. Other people's shows, they run it their way. But, I still find that suspect in some particular instances. We'll probably get an angry community post directed at us, because usually when you throw a rock into a pack of dogs and the one that yelps is the one that gets hit. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Alan Orchard, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Alan, for that support. And he said, LSA.
Hey, and LSA, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help it to keep on running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next. But before we do, someone said, no comparison, cops have to wear body cams to help preserve people's safety. No, what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to say that it's a comparable thing. These people are handling your money. And technically, if they're not handling your money a correct way, like if they say, I'm going to give all the money you give me to Ukraine, and then they don't, that's technically scamming someone. It's a crime. And so I feel like people ought to be a lot more transparent about that, so that way you're not having to ask those kinds of questions, and it's just a straightforward thing in the first place. I don't think that there ever should be an argument that we should remove transparency at any level of anything. I think transparency is a very big part of anything, even if it's the police officer who has the lives of the public in his hands, or if it's someone who has your own personal money in their hands that you've given to them thinking that they were going to do the right thing. The transparency should be at every single level. That's how it should be working, in my opinion, all the time. And we try and do that the best we can here on this channel, because I mean, every single one of our fundraisers is run through YouTube Give. Y'all publicly see the total. We don't even handle the money. YouTube handles all the money that y'all throw into the fundraisers on Sundays. We don't touch a cent of it. So there's no question of, are we stealing the money? We can't even touch it. YouTube's running all of it. So, you know, that's the way I like doing that. And then some other people will run a fundraiser where they set up a personal GoFundMe or something. And then it's like, okay, well, how in the world do we really know that all of that money's going there? Like, the GoFundMe closes. They never open a receipt after that to prove where it went. You just have to trust that they put all of that money into something. And who's to say that they put any of it in at that point? There's no proof or a receipt or anything. You're just having to go off of whether you trust these people or not. And, you know, there's an important thing to remember here. Con men are called con men because they're confidence men, and they build up confidence in people to believe that they're trustworthy when they're not. So just saying, I like so-and-so YouTuber and I don't think he'd ever do anything like that, well, that's usually what con men are relying on, is the public's trust that they're doing the right thing, when in reality they're not. That's really honestly the whole shtick of scams, is that a lot of people who run them seem fairly reliable, and you have a good amount of confidence in them. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I was scrolling through Twitter to do a quick news search real quick. Have you seen the robot in China going berserk?
And trying to beat up the techs? Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Go to the Twitter and show that real quick. That's insane. I was sitting here watching that. I think it was like throwing hands with the coders.
Dude, that guy, like bot turned into that guy from Australia that said, and the dog came running around the corner. You know, like that guy, he turned, like, that thing turned into that. Let me go show it to y'all. Matthew just put it right back on our Twitter. So there's the AI bot. This isn't an AI video. This is actually real.
Look at that thing.
That thing is tweaking.
That's crazy. That thing is literally like actually throwing hands. Bro, look at it. It's almost about to rip down the crane that's holding it.
It doesn't really look like it's coordinated much. It looks like it's just spazzing out, and then it finally stopped. A little bit wild with that one, though.
That's crazy, honestly. It looked like, I couldn't tell. It looked like it was trying to attack the coding guy that was at the laptop at first, and then it just kind of kept flinging. Look at that.
Man, that is crazy, honestly. It was very human in the way it was moving.
Yeah, it started out crazy. And they said they were doing a coding test on the robot, which this is a full-size humanoid robot. And apparently they uploaded some code to it, which I'm not sure if it was like some AI like enabled code or something, but whatever it is, the thing went crazy. I'm like, surely they didn't program it to start, throwing hands.
I don't think they programmed it to start throwing hands. I think this may have been a glitch, though, because if you notice, man, towards the end, it's literally just wildly flailing in every direction. It's not really, like, trying to target him or keep itself focused towards him. Like, see right here? They just walk behind it and shut the power off to it, you know? It's not even able... It's just bizarre, though.
That's not the first time that one of those has done this, though. They brought one out to a stadium in China as well. And
it started tweaking. Yeah,
it was walking along, and it was like high-fiving people. Then one guy like grabbed the arm of the robot or something, and the robot stopped for a minute. And then it lurched at the guy and started lunging at the guy and like throwing like punches at this guy in the crowd. Like, let me see if I can find that real quick.
Dude, find that one. That one's actually hilarious, dude. We got to go find that one.
China robot fighting crowd. Let's see. I should be able to find it. Okay, yeah, I think I see it. Oh yeah, I've got it. Let me go ahead and put it on the
that's
likes
the
tab.
great one. That's the best one, honestly.
Yeah, it's on the likes tab under there.
Cool, let's go get it. Oh
There it is.
yeah, this
Look
is
at
the
it.
one.
Look at that. Look, it's gonna start. Oh man, it's freaking squaring up with that guy. They had to grab it and hold it back. It was about to square up with that dude in the crowd.
Dude
Look
wasn't taking that.
It's going to headbutt the person in the crowd. Those things it looks like the same robot. Like the same robot. It's got the same like structure and everything.
Man, they're making these things violent with reason, man. Honestly, like these things are actually a little bit they're uncanny because they're a little bit too human at this point, you know?
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. This thing's right here's got that dog in it, man. It got grabbed by somebody in the crowd and it jumped and lunged at it and was going to start going at it. Look, that thing was squaring up.
And then they had to pull it back like they're trying to calm it down. And then, dude, that one in the back, though, is just chilling, man. Look at it back there when it comes into frame. Like, that one, bro, he's just on his way to go get some milk or something. Like, it's just chilling back there, you know?
It's actually like real people, man. Some are sane and some aren't.
Man, bro, that one's back there is just, like, waving at people and stuff. This one's squaring up, trying to beat someone's ass. Like, honestly, man, these AI are getting very human. Like you're saying, some of them have absolutely lost their marbles, and the other ones are just chilling. So pretty funny. I also like dude that was wearing like a pimp coat when it did this. Like it's like my name is Silky Johnson. I'm a purveyor of precious goods and services. Don't touch my coat, bitch. And then it's like trying to square up with him. Like,
This robot grew up in the hood, man. He's from the street.
Dude, this thing came out of North Birmingham earlier today, man. It was ready to fight. That thing was looking for blood. But anyways,
Man,
by the way,
put some respect on my name.
By the way, folks, if y'all think I'm kidding about North Birmingham, I could drop y'all down here and possibly show y'all a little bit of it. This is North Birmingham, by the way. If you like, in case y'all are like, how rough can it be? Why do y'all keep mentioning that? We drove through this today, and this looks like this is actually an okay part. A lot of the buildings are just completely abandoned and falling apart here in North Birmingham. It looks as bad as Detroit, really, in a lot of places, which was shocking because we rarely ever go into North Birmingham. So we were like, dang, look at that. Let's see here. Hold up. I'm trying to think. Where was another rough spot? North Birmingham was a pretty rough spot, which is over here. So let me drop y'all down in here. Pretty rough. It's
it looks a little bit rough. Also, what's up with that building over there in that Epstein Island building color over there? You see that?
Bro, that's an all-in-one. Stop and shop.
That's like the same color scheme they had on the Epstein's Island thing, like out there.
Yeah.
St. James.
Great rewards, a small investment. It's only $19,500 for that whole building.
Honestly, it's not worth $1, honestly.
Man, I'd agree. Honestly, man, it's kind of busted on God.
They priced it like it was a good at the dollar store or something, $19.95.
Yeah, dude, they did. Let's see. I think this area of Douglasville is also a rougher spot. I didn't look at it today, but I'll drop y'all down. Yeah, see, it's a bit of a rougher spot, It's abandoned buildings, falling apart, awnings, that kind of a deal. Honestly, most of Birmingham actually looks like that. Like, the areas that don't look like that would be Mountain Brook, Homewood, and everything kind of south and east of that, including Hoover. But once you get on over across this ridge right here, and you move into Bessemer, Midfield, Fairfield, Inslee, Birmingham, North Birmingham, Tarrant, and those places, it's really, really bad. But everything on the other side of that ridge is all right. So a little bit rough. Like, it's not a little bit rough. It's actually really rough out there. And God bless the folks who live out there because it's got to be a rough time all the time. Anyways. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that Birmingham is, I think, the fourth most dangerous city in the United States right now in terms of violent crimes. And Bessemer, Alabama, is the most dangerous city in America right now in terms of violent crimes. So if you think we're exaggerating, these places are actually more dangerous than Detroit and Chicago put together. So a little bit bizarre with that one. You wouldn't think that, but that's actually the reality of it. So with that, hope that does address that well. Hope you all now know why we've been mentioning that a couple of times tonight, because when you see it, you know it. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Howard Mendelson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Howard, for that support as well. And he said, Enforcer, No NIMBY in Iran is the quote of the week.
I'm actually gonna kick out of that one because the NIMBY thing's a big thing here in America. Like, Matthew, do you know about the NIMBY movements?
No, I don't.
The not in my backyard things where they're like, I don't want a power plant
Oh,
back there in a rail yard, an airport, put those somewhere else.
yeah, I know now.
So they usually the result is that the bad stuff's almost always put in the poor areas of town, or they're put off in the middle of nowhere in the woods. So they do not have that in Iran, apparently. I'm glad you got a kick out of that, because here in America, and really in most of Europe, NIMBY is a really, really big thing. People absolutely hate having stuff like that in their backyards, but it really is the biggest thing in America. Like over in Britain, it actually is likely that you could have a railroad running through a pretty decent neighborhood, and there's really no qualms about it, and there's not an argument made. Here in America, though, you run a rail. Well, then again, our trains are like 4,500 horsepower, and they shake the whole ground as they pass by. In Britain, that's not necessarily the case, but I guess that's why we have a huge NIMBY thing, because it's like, I don't want a giant AC-44C6M rolling through my backyard at 12 o'clock at midnight, rumbling the ground, and then sounding like hell as the 100-car train passes by for like 15 minutes. So I guess that's kind of why it's a NIMBY thing here. But, shoo-wee! If y'all saw what was around Boyle's yard today, that was urban decay, man. Like, this is where we were today earlier, man. Like, we were right here, we crossed the street. Remember that, man? And then we went up here, and we turned left.
Yeah.
We went up here. Bro.
That was tough.
That was tough. That whole area, that is tough. You know what? Let me drop y'all down there. Let me see if I can show you. Oh, there's the Church's Chicken. Yeah, we're right in the spot. This is North Birmingham in a nutshell. Really rough. I came here today to see if we could take a look at the CSX Boyle's yard. And no, you can. You literally can't see it from anywhere. It's just kind of hidden up in there. But now I won't be going back. And also, the BNSF intermodal yard over here is also a pretty damn rough one. So don't go over there either. Those are rough places. Don't train spot there. You'll end up getting spotted by the Crips, most likely. or the Bloods, or the Real Gang Disciples, or whatever they're called. So don't go through those areas. Rough areas. But anyways, with that, hope we were able to address that somewhat well. And it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a 20 as well. And huge shout out to Zyper Sniper for that support. And he said, if Putin wants to be the new Tsar, as he say, then he should join the fight like Tsar Nicholas II, so the second did. And Putin is a coward, and L will say forever.
Yeah, like if he's wanting to be a Tsar, he's got to go out there and fight with the troops. Like that's something that a lot of people don't get about monarchies. The kings, queens, and so on themselves would actually go out to the battlefields themselves. And, of course, I don't believe many queens actually directly fought in the wars, but the kings would. And also the lords and such things of the royal family also would as well, and all of the noble families on top of that, because it's their duty to defend the realm. And it's like, if he wants to be the Tsar, then he has to defend the Russian realm. He has to be out there on the front, or near to it, fighting with the men, or at least commanding the men up front. And it's like, he's not doing that, so he wants to have the benefits of being a Soviet premier, but also the title of the Russian Tsar. A ridiculous thing, Zyper Sniper, I'd agree. And I gotta thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. So a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, we got Pakistan getting crazy over here on Twitter. They're out here tweeting out Sun Tzu quotes, talking about if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate them. Honestly, I think they should probably just ignore that quote, because that's probably not a wise idea right now. They better not seek to irritate anything. They better just chill out.
Dude, Pakistan better listen to that old wise Sun Tzu quote that says, "Sit your ass down and shut the hell up." Like, it's like they ought to listen to that one. I think one of them actually was close to that, if I remember. Someone might be able to quote it. But anyways,
Sun Tzu also said something about, if you have nuke, try not to launch it. But the only problem is Sun Tzu wasn't alive when nukes were around, so he really didn't have the knowledge or the wisdom for that yet.
Man, actually, Matthew, they did say, Matthew, in the book of the Art of War, that due process is for the weak, I believe, or something like that. So, I think he was ahead of his time in some ways.
He said that?
Oh yeah, totally, man. Like, they were in China, man. They were working under the let's see, what was it? The mandate of heaven. Totally, dude. The emperor didn't have to work through anyone, because he was ordained by the gods to rule China, obviously.
I think you had the quote wrong. It's called quote unquote due process. What the hell are you talking about?
Oh yeah, no man, it's more like it's New York style due process. Forget about it. It's more like that instead. Because
Forget about it. Hey.
because everyone in ancient China spoke with a New York accent. Everyone just knows that. Anyways, with that. Hope that does address that well, but still, thank you once again for support, Cyber Sniper, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, thank you for Matthew for sharing with me that the Pakistanis are wild and out. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jocelyn White, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And huge shout out to you, Josh, for the support and also being here on the channel once again. And Josh said, "Thanks for the dedication."
And thank you so much, Josh, for appreciating the dedication and making it worthwhile, because the folks who watch this stream make our dedication worthwhile. It's a little bit crazy because Matthew, I know for sure that I don't. I think this might be the same for you. It doesn't really feel nerve-wracking anymore whenever we have like a crowd of like 11.3 thousand people here like we did tonight. It doesn't feel as nerve-wracking as it used to.
Yeah, I don't feel nervous at all. Thank you. Get on here with 7,000 people.
Exactly. Like, see, he's calm. He's not shaking like a leaf or anything. We're all right. But we are.
It's not nerves. It's the worm.
Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that one. I like that one. But beyond that, we don't really get nervous about massive crowds anymore, but we like to see them. We love to see massive crowds because it's really great to know that we put in all of this work and so many people actually come on and watch it and listen to it. It really does mean a lot to both of us because this is a massive work that we do every single night to put this thing out, and we're always happy to know that folks like you, Josh, really appreciate it, and hundreds of thousands of more do every single day. I mean, already so far, there's been 106,000 views on the stream, which is absolutely mind-blowing to think that many people have watched so far, and we're very honored to have had each and every single one of you all here with us so far. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. We are on to the next one, but thank you once again.
Also, could you imagine running the stream in person like we do it? Honestly, I don't think it would be possible to do it in person the way we do it right here, right now. Like, let's say we had like a stadium every single night with 10 or 12,000 people that's been on here recently on the stream, packed into a stadium to do this in person. The adrenaline rush from doing that every night would probably kill a person, honestly, or at least it would probably take me out because the adrenaline of doing that in front of so many people and talking and having to keep your thoughts together where you don't make a fool out of yourself is just that's draining, especially when it's in person. But being on YouTube, it removes that a little bit, so it's kind of a much easier thing.
Actually, I don't know, man. I think it actually would be tougher in some ways, easier in some ways, because something that I like, honestly, man, is like soul destroying to a lot of people is when they make a joke in a dead room, and we make jokes in a dead room every night. We don't know if anyone's laughing at jokes or what. I hope y'all are, but we don't know. Like, we are just like, sometimes we're not comedians, by the way, and I don't at all pretend to be. I mean, a lot of half of my jokes suck, but beyond that, we don't know if any of y'all are laughing. And we have to perform to a dead room every single night on everything. We don't get to hear of any audience reactions to anything that we do, really, beyond y'all saying in the chat LOL or putting in a laughing face or throwing in a super chat saying something was funny. So I mean, it would be easier in that way, because if we actually were making some pretty funny jokes here and there, at least we would be able to get a lot of laughs, and be able to hear that and be like, oh, that was good. Yeah, people laughed at that one. That's a good one. But man, it would be terrible to bomb on an actual stage where there actually was like 10,000 people and no one laughed. Like, dude, I would feel terrible. That would be crushing, really.
That takes a lot of recovery efforts to try to recover from that and just keep going. But it's not totally dead. That was when we say a joke, either one of us will react or we won't. Sometimes it's dead because sometimes we don't react to each other's jokes from time to time and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's not totally dead.
But we're kind of like free laugh tracks, though, dude. Like, we can just tell when each of us is like setting up a joke, so then we laugh at it. And you and me both know that sometimes we're just laughing to laugh, so that way it's not awkward because it was a joke, so we're not wanting to, I find all of Matthew's jokes funny, but I know that sometimes my jokes aren't, and Matthew's just laughing at him to make it not awkward. So that way I'm not having to go, damn, that one flopped, and then just move on. But
you're laughing at all my jokes genuinely. You're saying that you're fake laughing at them?
No. I find all your jokes funny. I really do. See, how's it great when he asked me if he found his jokes not to be funny, and I do. That's a great one.
That's a knee slapper right there.
Oh man, that's a good one. But you know, we put in a free laugh track for each other. So, you know, like honestly, I think a live crowd would be nice in that way. But also, man, think about having hecklers, man. Boo! You stink. Oh, I'd be like, get him the hell out of here.
I'd be like, I'd point at him, you get him out of here, go.
Look at him, he's living in his parents' basement, which like 70% of our generation is, so that's not even like an insult anymore. That's just literally statistically reality. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But I do thank you so much once again for the kind words and the support, because folks like you are helping this channel to keep on running and making it possible. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And let's see. And also thank you Jack Jelly for the kind words, and also thank you everyone for the kind words saying that we actually are funny, because most of the time, folks, the only thing we hear is people coming in, you suck and you're unfunny. Like, those people really just put it in the most brutal way they can, and it's like, I'm sorry that your life is miserable. It's like, but that's not our problem, you know. Like also like another thing is that like something that's crazy, I don't really think it would happen too much in person, is that a lot of people come in here and act like it's Burger King and it's have it your way. Like, they're just going to tell, like they're going to tell us to change our whole show that we're presenting to 11,000 people, and they're one of them. Like, that's something that always is just, like, I don't really see the connection there, where people act like they've got the gumption to tell us how to run a show that 11,000 people are watching and enjoying, and we've been doing it for years, and we've generally gotten it down to where we are able to keep the most people around by doing what they like, you know, and then they want to tell us how to run our show, you know, or something like, stop making jokes, stop doing voices. It's like, that's what we do, you know, it's like, it's a part of our thing, and I don't think they know that, but with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. You know, there's a lot we could talk about here, actually. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thank you once again to Josh.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Old Warrior, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Old Warrior, as well for the support. He said, tactically speaking, with all the AD guarding the parade, isn't Ukraine more likely to attack places where air defense has been pulled from? And Budanov probably has eyes on some.
There's a possibility. Budanov, like I've been saying, he's got that thing going on with the double chin, so something dubious is coming up, something diabolical, most likely is cooking, in his head somewhere, so that's a possibility. I don't think anything's off the table for May 9th. I would like to think that something will happen, but honestly, historically, nothing really ever happens on May 9th, so it might be like that again this year. But you never know. I mean, it could be a big year this year on May 9th. Who's to say? At this point, man, I kind of sound like the President of the United States. Who's to say? The terrorists might do bad. They might do great. I don't know. Like, it's like, well, you're the guy who's supposed to know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to James Hughes, who puts in a 20, and huge shout out to James as well for that support. And he said, will Ukraine attack the Reichstag replica during the Victory Day parade reenactment of raising the USSR flag?
Did you see the Reichstag replica, Matthew? Did you see it?
I haven't personally, no.
Let me go pull up that thing. That's actually crazy. Full-size Reichstag replica. Oh, yes. I see you know your judo well. Good one. This is it.
Good one. Oh, let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Russia built a Reichstag replica?
Yeah.
That is insane.
It is insane. It's not a full-scale replica, but it's close to it. It's actually pretty big. And it's so that way they can recreate the whole climbing on top of the Reichstag and planting a flag on it. Like they did in World War II. So, a little bit stupid. I think if the Ukrainians hit it, it would be hilarious. It wouldn't serve any strategic value whatsoever, but it would be hilarious if they did hit it. But I would doubt that they would, because once again, it's not really a strategic target. It's just a target of silliness, because it's really silly to spend all of this resource building this thing to then take it down right after May 9th is over. And also, look, it's Patriot Park, which there was a lot of propaganda and lies about. Like, they said when this thing opened that you could go there and drive tanks and shoot the guns. And the reality is that it's not really like that. It's more so just kind of like a display of Russia's weapons, which aren't even that good, all in one spot. And a lot of them are ancient, like that Akitsia and the Gazivka down there. Those are just ancient as hell. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I think it wants to give her support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Michelle Esquera, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Michelle, as well for that support. And Michelle said, LSA won the war with the hot dog man.
We actually did. We ended up outlasting him, and also eventually he ended up beating himself down. It really wasn't the LSA that won the war. He kind of defeated himself by just literally pitting himself against everyone on Earth. Like, he's not friends with really anyone, and it's honestly funny that he did that, and he'll keep doing that. I mean, he'll probably do that in his real life. He'll get in a fight with someone at a Shell gas station probably and get fired from Shell. For that, I don't even know if he works at Shell, but I'm taking a good shot at it. Or he's let's see, if he's doing anything, I'll assume if Hot Dog Man is asked by an employer, where do you see yourself in 5 years, he'll probably say under a bridge in a tent. I hope, because that's really where the guy belongs. The guy's an absolute piece of trash, and I know that sounds brutal, but with what that guy was trying to do to us, I do not have any reservations at all in saying that the guy deserves the worst to come his way, because he has absolutely no problem at all on a whim trying to just ruin people's lives for absolutely no reason rather than his own personal gain, which is a very sick person and a very bad person mentally off. But anyways, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Nelson Johnson, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Nelson, for that $20 support as well. And we do appreciate that. He said, thank you for the news, bros.
Hey, and thank you for enjoying it. We try our best around here. What can I say? We try our best around here. And I hope that it was a good news night. I gotta tell y'all, folks, the news nights are getting so long. I remember when we used to end on local time around 10:40. Now we get to the speech from Zelensky around 11:05 or 11:10 most nights, because we have about another 30 minutes of news each night because so much is going on. But I'm happy to know that people are appreciating the efforts that we're doing to cover so many things going on around the world simultaneously, because it sure as hell is a lot these days. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Jackal, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to Jackal for that support. And said, I'm just saying hi from a sunny Melbourne.
Hey, thank you so much for the support from sunny Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne, Australia. Take a look at this. Take a look at this, Melbourne. Oh my goodness, that is a rail yard and a half. What are these rail? They're all flat cars. What? Oh, they're intermodal cars. I forgot they didn't do the well car double stack thing in most other countries. Well, in any other country rather than America and Brazil, and I think a few others. So they have the single stack flat cars for the intermodal traffic, which is kind of neat looking actually. But still, I gotta thank you for the
those are a lot more secure than the type that you just put like a semi-truck trailer on the back of a flatbed on a train. Like, because I saw a video yesterday of train robbers in California. They would jump up on the flatbeds that had the semi-truck trailer sitting on top of them. They would go with the bolt cutters and they cut the bolts off the door, and they would just start throwing the Amazon packages on the sides of the rails and literally just loading them in the back of pickup trucks and taking them to like hideout and stash houses.
You know, they actually were doing that to all containers, whether they be actual truck trailers or intermodal containers entering the LA area for a while. It actually became a big deal. It became such a big deal, Matthew, that the Union Pacific pulled out the legendary Union Pacific Railroad Police, which, by the way, folks, served a full tour in Afghanistan, just to give you all an idea of what kind of police those are. And then they came back and they started to police the trains in LA. So I think they cracked down on that a good bit recently because of that. Because the railway police play no games. And I bet that's something that a lot of people don't know, is that a lot of these companies have their own railway police. So let me go pull up the Union Pacific Railway Police. Railroad police, I'm sorry. Railway is different. That's what people say in other countries. Railway police. Here we are. The Union Pacific Special Agents and Police Dispatch. It is a police agency specifically for the railroad with actual law enforcement powers, which is a pretty wild thing to think that a private company has a police force with actual, I believe it's actually federal law enforcement powers.
Let's see here. Also, it says the Union Pacific history here of the police. It says the members were called Pinkertons after the originator, Alan Pinkerton. Let's see here.
Oh my God, they're an evolution of the Pinkertons, bro. Yeah, don't mess with them.
Pinkertons. Oh my God,
bro. Oh my God. That's their only history, is that basically they're evolved Pinkertons. It's like, dude, I would not mess with them at all, man. They might just shoot you on the spot with the history of the Pinkertons. Historically, it's like I would be scared. But also, let me see here if I can go show you all this. So this is their little patch. Union Pacific Police. I also like that they have the U.S. Eagle, but that Eagle, dude, had like that Eagle has no chin, dude. It's all neck.
That's crazy.
But let's see here. Let's see. Let's side law enforcement agencies. It's a special agent title. Allegedly, were allegedly models for the FBI when it was created in 1907. So kind of a little neat, man, that the Union Pacific Police Department actually gave an idea to the FBI when it was founded.
That is crazy. I know, I'm just shocked at these folks, right? Wait, as of 2025, 107 agents of the UPPD have been killed in the line of duty. The train police are getting knocked off.
Yeah,
in
yeah, dude.
107?
The railroad police actually have some pretty like tough job, but that's like over the history of the Union Pacific Police, like over their entire history, not over just the year.
That's about if it was created in 1907, that means they've been losing about one a year.
Oh no. This you see, this was you know, it was pretty much found in the 1850s, you know, under the Pinkertons. So you know, over the whole history from 1850 to now, less than one of them die a year. So not bad. Actually, that's not bad running numbers, really. You know, but how many of them are in service? Let's see.
What are their weapons? You can scroll down a little bit.
Equipment.
They use the Glock Gen 5. Nice. They use the Colt M4 Classic, and they use the Remington H70. Kind of interesting.
Honestly, man,
shotgun.
This is like the most Pinkerton kind of loadout you can imagine, dude. Shotguns, rifles,
good
and
enough to
pistols.
work.
Yeah, like,
good enough.
dude, like they're gonna have bands roaming around Harlan County before long, taking care of people. But anyways, dude, honestly, it's just crazy to think that they actually have law enforcement powers, and it's a police department for a private company. Like, it's not, you know, like, it's just a little bit weird because CSX, BNSF, Norfolk Southern, and Canadian Pacific Kansas City also have railroad police, and also Canadian National, which also has a decent amount of main line in America. So, like, in the United States, I mean, so, you know, that's the reason why they have them. But man, it's actually crazy. Let's see here. In the 1890s, they organized Union Pacific bandit hunters to combat outlaw gangs committing train robberies. Also, man, I forgot to tell you, dude, but during the time of the Louisville and Nashville, you know, like when I was reading the history in their book, they just hired, like, I forgot who they hired, dude. It was like a sheriff, but they were building a railroad through the mountains of Kentucky near to Hazard, and also Prettensburg. And there was like a gang of people up here, like in the coal mines, that were actually like robbing the trains and the railroad construction crews. So they just hired a whole bunch of local sheriffs to just get up bands of armed men, and they go around and have firefights with these people up there. I mean, it was like a guerrilla war for like 3 years up there while they were building those railroads. And they had
they certainly weren't firefighting the people in Los Angeles, because I remember seeing that there would be security out there, and the people would still be throwing boxes out of backs of trains and throwing them into trucks and taking off with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's it was a really tough. I don't even think they had railroad police in Los Angeles during that time. I know they do now, because I remember that the company itself, Union Pacific, was putting out like publications saying that they were no longer going to let that slide. Like they said the robbery will stop. Like, regardless of whether the city of LA cared about it or not, they cared, because they're having to pay out insurance to the companies that are losing their goods that are being stolen off of these trains or damaged because of these vandals and bandits. So they sent in the railroad police to deal with it. I remember that. And I think these days it's not even a problem, because the railroad police came down hard, man. They were arresting people left and right from what I was hearing for a while.
Yeah, hopefully so. Those thugs were just running around, just literally ripping everything open and stealing it.
Yeah, man, it was crazy, dude. I think some of y'all may have remembered the videos from back in the day when that was happening, but you would have a slow-rolling intermodal, which is a container train, coming into the port of Long Beach, somewhere around here. Actually, honestly, those trains roll all through LA. There's different main lines and tracks that they do that in. And these people would go up to them when they started rolling fairly slowly, and they would start hopping on board and getting out the bolt cutters and opening up the container boxes and the trailers, and they would just start robbing everything out of them. And they would go through, they would actually have enough time that they would pick out the most valuable stuff and steal that, to go and resell it to make money. So that was a huge issue for a while. It was causing a lot of money and insurance losses for the railroad and also for the companies that were trying to get their goods shipped. And so it ended up being a bit of an issue. And so then they dealt with it. But still, really interesting stuff. And so that also someone said, take a look at the postal police. Oh no, I don't have to. The postal police are elite tier. I think the postal inspectors are the postal inspector is a hilarious thing to think that they exist, but it's actually a pretty wild kind of an organization. Let me go. Here we go. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Federal law enforcement powers, by the way. So they're not playing around. If you have the United States Postal Inspection Service on you, you've done something pretty wild through the mail, like some sort of mail fraud or something like that, and they will come after you. It's like, look at this. There are approximately 200 federal crimes that could be committed, which involve the mail.
Wow.
Dude, in 2021 alone, they made 5,141 arrests, leading to more than 3,700 convictions, mostly involving mail theft, mail fraud, and prohibited mailings.
That's crazy.
That isn't a lot of arrests, dude, for honestly from an organization that you never even heard about. You hardly anyone hears about postal inspectors. But they are out there doing work. A lot of it, apparently. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to stop talking about niche law enforcement agencies. They're pretty cool though. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the remainder of our super chats because we have quite a many of them and it's getting long into the night. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Veterans Maintenance Solutions, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Veterans Maintenance Solutions, for that support and also helping to keep us running. I do not see a comment left behind it, but we do appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support. While you didn't throw in a comment, we are greatly appreciative for it, and it helps this channel to keep on running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Alan Matthews, who puts in a 20. And a big shout to Alan also for the support. He said, trust, honesty, respect, and investment. And you guys are great.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And I certainly agree with those kinds of values. Legal, moral, and ethical. Remember those, Matthew. Remember. If you know the inside joke on that one, that's a joke from our childhood, actually. But beyond that, I do thank you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Robert Betancourt, who puts in a 10. And huge shout out to Robert for the support. He said, drone warfare has opened up defense. $5,000 drone wipes out 100 mil in equipment. And he makes a joke there at the last part. Sadly, I can't make that joke. I don't think you two would like it. But thank you, Robert, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much, Robert, for the support. And I have to say, quite a loss indeed. I completely forgot to cover all the Crimea news by the way tonight, folks. And I would, but we're running out of time. But we did cover all of that in the Shore War video earlier today. So a little bit redundant to cover it twice. So luckily we covered it earlier today. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Whiskey Echo. And thank you, Whiskey Echo, as well for the support. They said, do you think Ukraine is going to attack the military parade in Moscow? And I think it would be a real poke in Putin's eye.
I'm kind of on the fence on it. I wouldn't know. There's a chance that they could, but I also have a feeling that a lot of people have been coming up with good ideas tonight where they might attack other targets because air defense may have been pulled from around Russia to protect the parade for such an event. So it may leave other targets in the wide open during that time. So possibly, but it's a little bit too hard to tell. Matthew, what are you thinking about it?
I personally think, if we're talking about pulling air defense from other areas, maybe. But here's another possibility that people really haven't thought about. What if Putin and all these other world leaders are bowing out of this situation here because Russia's planning a false flag attack on their own parade? Well, I mean, what are the odds of that? Because let's say that they don't put air defense there, and all of a sudden a drone pops up and starts hitting all these soldiers, Chinese soldiers, Russian soldiers, etc. And then all of a sudden, Russia has a justification to pull China into the war, and also have a justification to either fully mobilize or use a nuke.
That is an interesting idea, too. I actually haven't thought about that. But the Russians are famous for doing false flags like the Belsan bombings. So it's possible. Not out of the question at all. But with that, I hope we both addressed that well. Thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Howie, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Howie, as well. He said, do you think... Let's see here. Sadly, I can't address this one, Howie. This one is political.
Howie.
Yeah, it's very political, very much. But Enforcer, what say you?
Howie, why would you do it? We can't read it. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. So big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Sir Real User 9, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Sir Real User, for that $5 support. They said, let's get the party started, and Putin will be joining us via Zoom. Regards, Spike.
In regards to Spike. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, and looks like Putin will join us via Zoom. It looks like Putin's trying to get into the YouTube game, but we've already kind of got him beat by a couple of years on that, so you'll have to catch up and do better. But still, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Peter Florence, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Peter, as well. He said Putin is doing a Bluetooth parade.
Oh, man, it's a funny one, actually, when you think about it. He's showing up to a military parade via Zoom. That's like the most lame thing I've ever heard. Why even have the parade at that point if the head of the country isn't even going to be there and he's there on a phone call or, a video call? That's just lame. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SC Deer Girl, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, SC Deer Girl, for that support as well. They said, give them the shin.
And we will give him the shin, the whole shin, and nothing but the shin. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from Monster Lab, who said, I bet if you ask AI to design service dress and parade uniforms for a corrupt fictional dictatorship, it would 100% resemble China's uniforms.
Probably so, or Russia's, or North Korea's. I have a feeling that they're in the top 3 runnings for that, but we'll have to see one day. But still, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Talgov01, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Talgov, for the support as well. And I do not see a comment attached, but Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but it means a lot and helps us keep this thing rolling. So big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. 1 second. This one goes to Philip Fix's LSA, who puts in a 5 as well. And he said, a quick glance at Rollins College in Florida. It's a classic brick college. LSA is the best because of y'all's dedication and the viewers' participation. And thank you, Philip, for that.
And let's take a look at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. Is this it right here? Is this it right here, huh? It looks like an old classic Florida college with a Spanish revival kind of an architectural style. A real architectural style. They're showing here the map of the... that's not a map of the campus. That's some bullshit flow map. I don't like those. I don't like those at all. Look, they got a church here, a chapel for you. I like this place. It's not bad at all. Not bad at all. Is it close to Brightline service? Actually, it kind of isn't. Brightline's all the way down here, but kind of close. I do thank you for the support, though, and helping this channel to keep on running and telling us to take a little gander at the place. Because it's not bad at all. Not bad at all, I says. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
You know what's interesting as well? I went and put into Grok, which is an AI. I asked it to design a service dress parade uniform for a corrupt fictional dictatorship like Monster Lab suggested, and it came up with something sort of fascinating, to say the least. Let me go grab the image real quick. I'm going to try to send it to you over Discord so we can take a peek at it. I'm going to let y'all sort of make up your mind about what y'all think. This was created based on the prompt that Monster Lab gave. So take a look, unfortunately. Let me know what your thoughts are about that. It's kind of fascinating.
Why is he British?
I don't know. And also, notice the uniform. What's the uniform look like?
It's literally like the same kind of Mandarin collar of the Marine Corps. But that
Yeah,
honestly,
it's like the Marine Corps uniform.
but honestly, man, that's actually very close to a British dress uniform. Like not the one that the household guards use, but other units. I've seen this before. This is actually almost entirely British looking. And it's like, why is that what it picked? It's like, shouldn't it be Chinese or North Korean or Russian? Instead, it goes with almost like an Anglo-American style uniform. I think I think this should be investigated by the Congress a little bit, possibly for foreign subversion. I believe. I believe Grok may be manipulated by communist subversions, or foreigners for the large part that may be compromised by communists. It is a little bit interesting that Grok is an AI system on a platform that is run by a guy who also has an automotive company that has a significant manufacturing and financial base inside of the People's Republic of China. Perhaps there is a communist element to this after all. I believe we'll have to have the House Committee of Un-American Activities investigate that. Senator McCarthy will do quite well. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Edgy Number 1, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Edgy Number 1, for that support. And he said, Russia likely to announce an end to the war on May the 9th, and Putin will spin it as a win and shift the narrative to blame the West in order to attack NATO in 5 to 15 years.
Maybe, but it's really hard to say that the war is over when there's technically not a treaty with the other party, because you could say it's over and it's not, and the Ukrainians will just keep attacking you. So, like, you could say it's like that would be a tough one to pull off. Not impossible, but tough one to pull off in practicality. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to VP the King, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, VP the King. They said LSA pizza fun.
Thank you so much for the pizza fun. We love pizza around here. It's a cheap, easy meal. That's also meeting most dietary concerns. You have dairy, bread, vegetables, fruits, all the kinds of things on your pizza. If you have a pineapple pizza, and then that's heresy. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dubstep Kid 801, who puts in a 2 as well. They said, hello, LSA family, enforcers, Andrew and Matt. And also, hello to you, Dubstep Kid. How you doing?
Hello there. Hello there, Dubstep Kid. I thank you for the support. And while I'm about to cough right there and helping this channel keep on running, I'm glad that you're here tonight. Hey, hello to you. And you also call me by my name, which feels really weird because not even my friends call me by my name anymore. They all call me Enforcer too. And I didn't even ask them to do that. They just started doing that, and now I'm just kind of like that everywhere. Everyone calls me Enforcer, except for like a handful of people. It's weird, you're freaking me out. I'm just kidding, by the way, but still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Los Catarales, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Los Catarales, for their support. They said, I'm celebrating 2 years being sober today.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and celebrating 2 years sober. We've been sober for, Matthew's been sober for 25 years, and I've been sober for 23. We never started drinking, technically, so that's why. But it's a very good thing to hear, because drinking is all right in moderation, but anything in excess is always not good. Like they always say, the old saying goes, even too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And so I would have to say, very good on you that you're 2 years sober, and congratulations on that for sure. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, also, Soldier Not the Goat, you're wrong. Tomatoes are not a fruit, they're a vegetable. I know, that's wrong. But the Supreme Court of the United States has deemed that tomatoes are a vegetable. And that was done all the way back in the 1890s. Don't ask me why they even did a case on that. Like, I don't even know how. I don't even know the story behind it. But it happened in 1893. And they said because tomatoes are usually an accompaniment of a salad, which is largely made up of vegetables, that tomatoes, for importation purposes, are to be classified, and are to be nationally classified, as a vegetable. I just have no clue why, but it is a fruit. It really is a fruit. But then they call it a vegetable. I don't know why. But anyways, with that, I hope that is addressed the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you, Sarge, for that support. They said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And hit the like button. That is an order. And I got to thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment, and helping this channel to keep on running. You're always here and always supporting the channel. And I always get to thank you for encouraging people to hit the like button, because we've nearly hit 4,000 likes over the course of this stream. And also, let me go pull up the U.S. Supreme Court on tomatoes. Let's see, on tomatoes. Here, let me go get it. Yes. Here we go. Nix v. Hedden in 1893. I actually got the date right, which I'm really happy with, because usually I'm like a few years ahead or behind. Is a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States in which the court unanimously held a 9-0 vote that tomatoes should be classified as vegetables rather than fruits for purposes of tariffs, imports, and customs. So technically the Supreme Court says, and this is the law of the land, that tomatoes are vegetables and not fruits when they're clearly a fruit. And it's one of those decisions I can't get behind, because what was the point? Like, it could just be classified as a fruit for tariffs, imports, and customs. Why not? But instead, they said that it should be classified unanimously, mind you, a 9-0 decision that it should be a vegetable. Make it make sense, folks. Make it make sense. And this has never been overturned, from what I know, ever. So that's actually on the books. It's just insane to me. Like, Matthew, does that make any sense to you at all? Because it makes no sense to me.
Well, I don't know why the justices are like considering themselves vegetable and fruit experts. Really, that's like real, whatever.
I don't even know. Like, we could read the decisions. Maybe it makes sense, but we're running out of time, so we won't do that. But still, you are right, Sluggernaut. But the Supreme Court says otherwise. It's stupid. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Jack said the Supreme Court gets things wrong all the time. Yeah, they do. It's all subjective. Is that they can't be experts in everything. They're just going off what they're being told by the lawyers.
But we still have to go with what they say, like it's kind of playing the game. But, like, that's stupid, but it is what it is. So technically tomatoes, at least for legal reasons, are vegetables, although they're certainly not. And the Supreme Court even admitted in that case that they weren't, but they were still going to classify them as a vegetable. But anyways.
Yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about, but they're making decisions anyway.
Dude, the Supreme Court sat there on that year, man, and they said, hear ye, hear ye. They tax me to keep me a vegetable. Oh my God, like the tomatoes. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sinfinite Channel, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Sinfinite, as well. They said, long-time lurker here, and you were sounding sharp, sir.
Hey, and thank you for being an American lacquer. And thank you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, too. Hey! And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that was addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazoth, as well for the support. And there's no comment attached, but we do appreciate that very much. And we also have a 2 from Florida Camera, who said Saudi ground forces should go into Yemen, in my humble opinion.
I would say yes, I would agree with that as well. I honestly think that a coalition of Saudi, Yemeni, and American forces should deal with the Houthi situation on the ground. I think that would be the best way to fix it. But that's considered war hawking by some, so we'd rather just have them continue firing at Israel, our ships, other people's ships, and then everything else in between. So, but with that, thank you once again for support, helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to X, and X puts in a $2 donation, and thank you very much, X, for that support. I said, thank you for unbanning me, Enforcer. I'm back. And also, you're never banned, by the way, but thank you for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
You're never banned. You're never banned. I don't even control the bans, and I know you weren't banned, but I do thank you for the support and being here with us tonight and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also, Bradley Coy, I didn't know that Steve Luckner said kind things about this channel and actually recommended it to you. That's actually very kind of him. We thank him for that. Because we think he's a great guy. He does a good job. Honestly, he is really, like, he's considered the guy for kind of like world news events on YouTube. I would say we're getting on up there at this point to being in that kind of a category. But he's been the guy who's been around pretty much over the whole history of YouTube that's done it, and also the guy who wrote an episode of Seinfeld, which is a really big plus to me because Seinfeld's my favorite like television comedy series in my opinion. So pretty baller that he actually wrote for an episode of Seinfeld. I think that's really neat. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on now to our live chat questions proper. It's now time to move away from our super chats. And once again, thank you all for supporting the channel once again tonight. And we're now going to grab the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, as well as for Her Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said, tonight's Morse code decipher says, excuse me, by the way. They said, India is going to war still. Russia getting hit bad. Israel's invading Gaza. Lots going on. LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And that y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all while I was stuttering over my words there. I was stuttering over them. Getting that correct again. I gotta say, really crazy right there. Really crazy. I keep getting it right time and time again. But beyond that, I gotta thank you once again. I hope that this addressed it quite well to all of y'all in the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps, because y'all always have proven to the Lee Spring Army that y'all are on the ball and y'all know how to read that stuff. You know what I mean? Or at least listen to it and know what it is. Y'all learned about it. But anyways, so that it is time for us to get on into some live chats. I know many people are going, damn, it's a long one. It's 3 hours and 35 minutes long. Hold on, folks. Hold on. Wait a minute. There we go. I got the tuberculosis out of my lungs there for just like 3 minutes.
He's not a hacker, but call him the next Edward Snowden because he's really hacking in.
We're in the mainframe. Like, that's what we're in the mainframe. But beyond that, I got to thank you all once again. And I know that a lot of people are saying that it's pretty late in the night. I'd agree. It's a 3-hour and 30-minute long show. And technically at this point, we're going overtime. So, with that in mind, we're going to be addressing 3 live chat questions. And then we're going to be rounding this thing out. So that way we can get some sleep. Because I'll be honest with y'all, I haven't been sleeping well for the past few days. Because for some reason or another, there's some sort of a loud-ass noise outside of my building. I keep waking up in the damn morning at like 8 o'clock. And I'm going to bed at like 4. So with that, it's time for us to get on to the third to last question of the night.
All right. So this one goes to B. And B says, Matt, what would the U.S. do if Turkey targets Israel? If Turkey targeted Israel, I have a feeling that Turkey would probably be ejected from NATO. I have a feeling that would probably be a pretty swift thing. And there would probably be a lot of support behind it, too. And also, Turkey would find themselves in a bad position militarily. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, if Turkey attacked Israel, they're not getting Article 5 protections because they initiated the conflict. So they wouldn't even have to be jettisoned out of NATO. They just reap the consequences of that one. And that probably would end up being a pretty bad one for Turkey, because as far as the air power war would go, Israel has the upper hand advantage quite easily, in pretty much every single way on the air side of things. So wouldn't go well for Turkey. And I have a feeling that that also would be met by a major amount of international condemnation, whether the Turks think it would or wouldn't. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it's time for us to get on to the second to last question of the night. And so what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
And this one goes to Elijah, who says, what is the likelihood of a United States response to a Pakistani nuclear strike?
Most likely, if it remains contained between India and Pakistan, there wouldn't be an American response. We would probably respond by being shocked, but beyond that, we probably would not practically respond in any way, because we're generally trying to say that there should be peace on both sides. And of course, that's just, thoughts and prayers kinds of statements, not really an actionable sort of a thing. And considering that we haven't really actually picked a side between the two, either India or Pakistan, it's making it a little bit clear to me that if this went from bad to worse, we probably wouldn't really get that much involved at all, which I find is a bit of a disservice, because I think for our long-term strategic interests, we should be supporting India in this matter, not in a direct military way, but, of course, diplomatically and materially if necessary. But nevertheless, the current prevailing minds in Washington believe that that's not the case. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, or at least to give the answer I would to it. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that one goes to Scott. And Scott says, what if Ukraine attacked all the vehicles that will be gathered before the Russian Victory Day parade?
They could try. It would be really hard to get all of them. They could try and target a few of them, but it would take hundreds of drones to actually be able to make that successful. They could try, and they could probably end up knocking out some of them before they even made it to the parade grounds, and that probably would cancel the entire parade and generally be considered an attack on the parade grounds itself in the Red Square. So that might implicate the same sort of issues if they were to land a drone that blew up right in front of Xi Jinping, possibly. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I might be wrong on that. And also a big thanks to Marc-Andre Brunette, who just threw in a 2 Canadian right there. Hey, 2 Canadians. That's like 2 Corinthians. But beyond that, I gotta thank you all once again for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this stream for all of y'all. And I gotta say, what a night it was. What a night it was, folks. We had 11.3 thousand people here at the peak. Really crazy kind of numbers there. And we also had about 114,000 views over the course of the stream from the beginning to the end. We're entirely honored, grateful, and appreciative to have had all of y'all here tonight. And if y'all have enjoyed it greatly, y'all know what to do. You hit that like, comment, and the subscribe button. You know what I mean? And I gotta thank everyone for watching the video today, too. That thing did pretty damn good. I was honestly shocked by that. But nevertheless, I thank you all so much once again for watching. And I will see you, well, actually, we will see y'all tomorrow. Matthew will see y'all in the show video tomorrow. But we will both see y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And not only that, we're going to be running the Sunday night fundraiser tomorrow, so make sure to be here. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraine, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us yet again on day 1165 of the news. And we will see you all tomorrow on the Sunday night fundraiser stream, where we'll raise even more money for those in Ukraine to help the civilians that are victims of Russia's brutal aggression. And with that, folks, thank you all for watching once again. And I will be with you all tomorrow midday on the Short War video if there is enough news to cover. And also, obviously, on the stream again tomorrow night. But with that, folks, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.